and we're in the middle of qualifying as well. Joining us for the beginning, or at least I think a lot of the stream tonight or this afternoon, we have Scotty as well. So welcome, Scotty. How are you doing?
Doing all right. It's good to be back. We've had 18 hours of racing throughout the series so far. Time for 6 more. But before we go racing, of course, we must qualify. And we're already a good way chunk into our quali session that's brought forward slightly. Our AM drivers are finishing their final laps at the moment. Leon Vespar is using all of the track, all of the curb on the exit of the final corner as they come up to the line, see if they can put the number 17 oNiD car on pole position. But as the AMS finish their qualifying, let's just have a quick check at the championship standings, which is very close coming into this final round. Double Yellow Motorsport lead the way in the 181 McLaren, 298 points. Being trailed 11 points behind is the 36 Lewis Racing car. I've absolutely butchered that pronunciation. And then 9 points behind them is the Butter Dogs Junior 333 BMW in third place. But you can see very close end down to P6, who are further 6 points back with OneSim Pitskill.io in the 92 Porsche in fourth. oNiD Simhan Academy in fifth on 273 in BMW, and then that WL Motorsport 301 in sixth, just 1 point further back. So very close, still plenty up for grabs, and Vespar's not able to put the car on pole. It will be Dider Santon in the 92 that will be heading off for pole position within the AMS class. And now it's time for the pros to try and set a lap. Let's have a look at their standings. It's a little more spread out. The 81 Martel Motorsport Racing Ferrari car is leading the way. They've been strong throughout most of this series with 314 points. 31 points back is the MA70 Esports Ferrari. So two Ferraris leading the way. Then the number 6 Butter Dogs rounds out the top 3 in the Bentley. 2 more Ferraris, the Connexus Motorsports 55 in 4th place, and the Infilix Racing number 8 car that have been quick but had their struggles throughout the season sit down in 5th place. Ferrari Motorsports 777 Aston Martin ahead of the oNiD Racing 992 Porsche. As we go further down, a little further back, as mentioned, these points a little more spread out, so it's going to be a bit more difficult for drivers to make an impact on this final round, but you never know what might happen. Orion Meggins sets the first time of our pro cars and immediately up into pole position.
Indeed, that's certainly a constant throughout the series. These Ferraris have been quite quick. Meggins, Jahavi doing a great job there. Muska slotting into first, stealing pole away from Meggins by 1/10 and a half. 2.5 minutes to go in qualifying. A couple more laps to go. You're a bit of a squeeze when you've got split qualifying in terms of time, obviously, and especially if you're dealing with traffic on your lap, as well as the Bentley behind Thorpe here does have to deal with. Thorpe obviously not yet set a time, down in P15 behind obviously the AM class there, wrangling the Ferrari around this what can be a tricky circuit. Luckily in qualifying it's not too much of an issue generally, obviously avoiding any track limit infringements, and again luckily it's dry, so they don't have to worry about too much oversteer or going wide or anything like that as Thorpe comes through towards not where I thought he was actually, so we'll move on that. Still obviously on his lap. Let's see if I can see if he's got any delta or anything. No. Thorpe and Goodgis got yet to set a time then.
Some leaving it a little bit later. Of course, the drivers, with it being a dry session, are eating up into their dry allocation of slick tyres. Only 5 for qualifying and the race with a 40-minute or 45-minute stint timer. Let me just double check which of the two it is. 45 minutes stint timer. They'll have to be completing quite a few pit stops. I think you can break the race up into 8 stints. Of course, in 3 of those stints, you will have to run or double stint a set of tyres, keeping on old tyres, but taking a shorter pit stop to sort of gain a bit of track position potentially. So strategic decisions to be made, and when are you going to use these set of tires that you've used in qualifying in the race could be a very important decision. Andy Thorpe has got a time in, currently sitting P12 overall, or P9 within the pro class, 1.6 seconds off the top, but everyone on track improving as we have 30 seconds left.
Indeed, obviously started out green. We had the AMs go out. There's been 15 minutes, if you like, of tracking. It doesn't sound like much, but every little helps at the end of the day. So these final drivers here will be having a bit more grip than what the session would have started with. Megan's here resides in P2. Looks to be threatening pole with their current improvement as they round their way towards the tricky final goal. At least it will be very tricky in the wet. Obviously, you want to straight line that braking, flick it in and get ready for this long start finish straight. Don't go too wide on the exit either, especially in the wet. Again, could be very slippy as they now run towards the line in that Ferrari there. Let's see then if they are able to still pull away. They are indeed. 31.2 there. Again, 2/10 buffer there to Mexico, who themselves are actually looking to take that pole back straight away from Megan's. Got a 3/10 improvement on the board so far. And indeed, seals it straight away back from Megan's up to pole. But great job from those two. Look at that gap there, 5/10 gap between Megan and Jahabi and the top of the field there. Gudgiska also slotting into fourth. Another Ferrari driver. So it looks like the Ferraris have got it all sorted out, Scotty, for this race so far.
Yeah, Ferrari's top of the standings in the series. Also top of our qualifying session here. Looking at the front two rows, can Daniel Lindblom with the Porsche jumps himself up into 8th place in the main pack of the Pro Cars, which they'll be satisfied with, let's just say. 1.4 seconds off top of the times, but do get themselves in front of the leading car. A few of the pros struggling to qualify all the AM cars, including 51 Aston Martin, 38 Aston Martin as well as the 24 Ferrari with Andy Thorpe that we were watching a little earlier on. But yeah, difficult race coming up. Mentioned the tyre allocation that the drivers have, the maximum driver stand, but it is also variable conditions this race.
Indeed, look at the race start as well. Variable is certainly the word for it. It looks to be raining currently with a wet track, but apparently in 10 minutes' time, at least, it'll be the rain will stop. So obviously, still dealing with a damp track. For how long, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly an interesting choice. I mean, obviously, you're going to have to start on dry tires. It doesn't make any sense to start on wet tires with the current forecast and the current track conditions. But it's then managing those just to be able to get through to the dry part of the drier part of the race, I should say, and maybe start getting some temperature in. I mean, is that a choice though? Maybe you could start on the wet and gain some early positions and try and hold on to that track position. Obviously, this circuit certainly lends itself to defending track position rather than trying to overtake it and regain it. But certainly, I think a difficult choice for some of the drivers right now.
Yeah, this is a very difficult choice. The limit on dry tires will certainly have a big influence on this decision. It will push drivers towards using a wet tire, of which they're not limited on. If you take a slick at this point, it's going to get really cold, it's going to grain, and even then when it dries out, you'll struggle to have good pace on the
Mm.
tire. So you can guarantee when the drivers come in for their first pit stop, they'll be changing tires, whether it's from one used slick to another new set, or whether it'll be from a wet to a slick. But yeah, it really is. You could go either way in these conditions. It will be interesting to see which will come out best. We don't know exactly when the rain is going to stop. It's going to stop within the next 10 minutes, but we still have 3 minutes till the formation lap starts. Couple of laps on the formation lap. The rain could have stopped by the time we come round for the green flag.
That's true. That's certainly true. But then you're still dealing with a wet, cold track, as you say. But I think the drivers, as you rightly pointed out, might be more inclined to start on those wet tires and just deal with them. It's going to be great at the start, and then it's just a case of putting up with those overheating wet tires on a damp, cold track versus struggling with the graining and eventually never getting any grip with the dries. And then it'll be obviously a race to who blinks first and does eventually go into the pit lane and how they can meld that into their strategy. and make it work the best way they can. But obviously, you have to wait and see. A couple of drivers obviously looking for a great start. Obviously, Petionek, Yanis Mayer, Andy Hearn, those pro drivers sitting within that AMP field. There is obviously always a bit of an overlap, and those drivers will want to be trying to get past as quick as you can. I see a little driver cam there, or at least a little monitor cam perhaps. Driver seems to be getting themselves ready. Actually, they are there. They're just slightly out of shot. That's fair enough. Using their keyboard and mouse to just do any last minute setup changes, changing the tire pressures, getting them ready to manage in the wet with the wet tires when the track is in the changing conditions. Another issue, obviously, despite including the rain and eventually the visibility, is the darkness. It's very dark out there, Scotty. Really early in the server at the moment.
Yeah, it is quite dark. That's also making it very cool, which might suggest you towards wet tires since it's cool conditions. It's not going to help the slicks get up to temperature. Might mean the track is a little bit slower to dry out. But yeah, once the drivers get their headlights on, that won't be too much of an issue for them. And the track isn't too wet. It's only light rain we have at the moment, so there won't be a lot of spray, because that would be an even bigger factor if we'd had heavy spray and a lot of rain. Visibility could be very difficult, but I don't think that should be an issue here, as we should not be far from the starting the formation lap now. Just one more minute. One more minute for the drivers to contemplate their strategy and make sure they're happy with the decision they've made. Whether they will be in 40 minutes' time, that is a different question.
Certainly, as we see a little preview of the standings there as well, alongside the screen. Very, very spread out are the pro class, but certainly going to be lots of points on offer tonight with some drivers having to sign out, unfortunately. But that plays the advantage of the other drivers. It's a shorter circuit as well, so just a little bit more room on track for them as they make their final preparations and get ready to hit drive and start their long formation lap. An attempt to get those tires where they need to be before the start as well, and see what is the track really like when they drive around it. How damp and wet, as you mentioned, is it? It doesn't look too bad, to be fair, and the rain should be stopping soon as well, so it shouldn't be awful. But yeah, the drivers will soon find out.
Yep, drivers will soon find out indeed, as they now roll off for the formation lap. This is really first indicator we'll get of exactly how wet the track is. You can see the spray already starting to come up. As you can see, race control declaring that is a wet race. And so now it's look very carefully on the sidewalls of the tyres. Do you see the yellow Pirelli marking that denotes a slick tyre? Well, you can just make them out, I think, there. On second place, Orion Meggins. Doesn't look to be visible there for Alex Shahabi, or is it? Hard to tell in these darker conditions, but I think we are already seeing mixed decisions from the drivers on whether they go wet tyres, whether they go slicks, and they'll certainly make an interesting, maybe somewhat chaotic start of this race, as some drivers scrabble around for grip on the slicks and others are trying to make places up on the wet tyres.
Indeed, yeah, and might be a few surprises for the drivers at start when the driver ahead has a different tyre come down with them and the lights go green and suddenly there's something of a roadblock in front of them, but we'll have to also wait and see. About halfway round through Sector 2 now. Certainly will be interesting. Obviously, a lot of this track you can kind of manage regardless of what tyre compound you've got on. Sure, it might not be optimal, but it's when you get down to the hairpins and the downhill last corner, tricky braking, those kind of corners will really be the issue, the biggest issues the drivers will face. We'll have to wait and see though. Flicking through the grid, so get to look at some of the nice liveries, some nice creations as well that the drivers come up with, the teams come up with, which is always a great little activity. I do enjoy looking at these liveries.
Yes, some lovely liveries on display for what we could be seeing for the last time here. Not just final round for the series, but I believe it could be potentially our last time streaming ACC. It's a bit of a shame to move on, but we are moving on to better things with Le Mans Ultimate. But it is still the final time for the final round. We're rounding the final corner now for round 5 here at Valencia of the Abruzzi Endurance Championship. The drivers rolling up to the line. They'll be looking at their tire temperatures, wondering just how much grip they'll have for T1. The last thing they'll want to do is start this race off with a track limit warning. Look to the lights. They'll shortly turn green and send our drivers on their way. The green flag is out and we're away now. Immediately squeezing over the second place car is Eric in the number 70 Ferrari into T1 now. Megan's slots back into line, but into deep, has misjudged the grip, sliding on the wet paint now. And Eric in the 70 Ferrari falling down to P4. The Bentley up the inside as they're 3 wide in the background. Down Perez, who must be on a set of wet tyres, already up to P5. And we've got a couple of spins in the background, including the 38 Aston Martin, who is going to get going again, but has dropped down to the back for this field. The Bentley, maybe on wet tyres too, they're running right round the outside of Alex Shahabi into the left-hander. Alex Shahabi trying to go for a bit of a cutback, but just doesn't have the grip. And we're already seeing different strategies. Some drivers struggling more than others.
Yeah, we certainly are. So drivers going side by side. But this is the thing, we might see some early gainers, but how long can they hold on to that position? Sure, they've got the best tyre compound as it stands right now, but again, what's the long game? There's a little bit of a snap there from the Ferrari, the BMW, a little bit of a tag there, as well as they obviously unexpectedly had to slow down, find their way through the hairpin. They're on to the power now towards a very tricky corner. They've got to manage the inside curb up at corner at turn 12 here. Avoid the outside curb, so don't go too far outside that. You'll upset the car. Mustang really brave, going very deep there. Managed to keep on the circuit though as he approached the final corner then. And let's see where our gainers are. Obviously, Liam Precipice up 6 places, as you mentioned, up to P4. Jordan up 3 places. But Mutska, who we saw start the race at the front of the pack, down 4 places to P5.
Yeah, we see 76 right here struggling out of the final corner. Yeah, as you mentioned, Eric really struggling with grip at the start of this race. Maybe another thing to consider, it's not just about which tyre compound you're on, but also how do you have the tyre pressure set? Do you adjust them for these wet conditions? As we can see continuing to struggle is Eric now fighting with Matt Goodger-Scott, who gets down the inside and will displace them for P6 now. So I think that group of cars you see from 6th to 10th of lost positions are all cars on slick tyres. Matt Jordan now has taken the lead up front with, we imagine, those set of wet tyres. And Leon Perez getting their way past Alex Shahabi for P3 overall. Been a very good start for them, but the question is, can they hold on to it through this stint? How long will the wet tyres be the favourite tyre? How long until they start to overheat and drop off as the track dries up?
And again, thinking even longer game, if it is, those drivers that are on the wet tyres, they're one more set in their location that they haven't touched yet, and they can pull them out the bag later on if it works with their strategy. But we'll have to wait. See, Nick Mandis here had an awful start, really, down to 9th. We watched Lindblom come around the final corner, a bit of a tighter line there. The Ferrari in the background will have a slight run on them as they obviously all line up and enjoy the slipstream as they head towards turn 1. Lexus there, I think of Mendes more to the inside, just looking to get past the Ferrari. There we have Bjorn Weiser here into the pit lane in the the 38 Aston Martin. Obviously, we'll be losing place after place here. Repair some damage, maybe change some tyres and get going again. Andy Thorpe has taken the fastest lap of the race as well, away from Matt Jordan. So doing something right is Andy Thorpe down in P15.
Obviously struggling at start. We've got replay here of the opening lap with Bjorn Weiser coming into turn 2. Just gets caught 3 wide. The Lexus squeezing them in towards the Porsche and then get collected as well by another Aston Martin. So unfortunate start for them. They're already in the pits repairing that damage. But yeah, plenty of racing ahead still. Just under 6 hours. We're barely into this race. Still a strategy too, which they can use to try and take advantage. And of course, if they do change tyres, they might be on a bit of a better strategy, either having better set of wet tyres for this stage, or going to a better set of slick tyres for the remaining part of this opening stint.
The track has gone from wet to damp, but you know, as you can see, there's no sunshine. It's a mere 22 degrees, and 7 in the morning. It's going to be damp, I think, for some time, and certainly cold. Will take some time for those dries to come to life if they ever do. Phil Sayers here down in P12, behind the pack of these AM cars here. Obviously, Liam Vespers is down the road some. So these three, obviously on the same kind of strategy here, will be battling each other as a car peels off into the pit lane. That's the Ferrari of Andy Thorpe, who had the fastest lap of the race. Perhaps that's because he didn't have enough fuel. I could speculate, maybe doing a drive-through. We'll have to wait and see. See why he's entered the pits so early, really. But Tossin also in the pits, along with Michael Horak there.
Well, second fastest lap of the race, you'd have to suspect one of the drivers on wet tyres, maybe opting to bail from that strategy now. It is a bit on the early side, but that's what they've decided to do. It, feels like a very early pit stop, but the saying goes, you've got to be on the right tyre at the right time. Maybe they feel like it was still worth that short stint on the wet tyre, and now just, instead of hanging it out on a deteriorating wet, just get the right tyre on and go as fast as they can.
Yeah, certainly certainly worth thinking about. Muska here at 6. Ferrari then for P6. It's Dan Matkitka Scott not far behind, and obviously Emily Vogel waiting to snap up and seize any opportunities that may present themselves with these two cars tussling as they go through turn 11. Obviously Ferrari, then just look at the inside of the Mustang briefly as they head up towards turn 12. You've got to be single file through this corner, braving it out on the curb. Phil Sayers here going side by side, in fact gets past the Mustang there going into turn 12, and that's left Pitty Ellick in the Aston Martin with a fair bit of overspeed, I think, as they approach the final corner. Mustang wants that position back, goes to the outside onto the brakes, so to try and straighten on it, avoid the curb, get it all settled before you get onto the start-finish straight for into the slipstream, and then on the attack end. Liam Vespers also peels off into the pits. So as I said, claiming those early positions, thinks it's a good time to swap over and continue with this momentum, and we'll have to wait and see how that turns out then.
Just 7 minutes into the race, so certainly a good opening stint for them, but whether they can carry on is another question. Have got our opening first penalties from the opening lap coming in, but another penalty for Butolfson, drive-through for speeding in the pit lane. So one of those early cars come into the pits, change tyres, just going to set themselves a little further back with more time to make up. Interesting to see, when does our leader Matt Jordan from the field in the 22 Bentley, when do they come in to change tyres with everyone else? They still seem to be holding pace at the front of the field. Let me just have a little look at the last laps. Was still half a second quicker than Orion Megan's behind, and the only car to set a 1:36 last lap. So pace is still there for Matt Jordan, and so you can imagine, as long as it is there, they will carry on. Just make you wonder if the others may be pitting too soon, if they can hold on to a car recovering from the runoff. That's the number 76 Ferrari, as we see Matthias Fuskin in now for the 800 BMW. Sliding into the final corner is Phil Sayers, gets the car back under control for running into the double yellow motorsports car 301, but does allow Peter Yalnick to get past in the 51 Aston.
Indeed, some more cars in the pit lane there. Tolston obviously serving that drive-through penalty that you mentioned, and Nick Manders there as well, so that's an interesting one. Spence, these two door banging, going side by side through turn 1. Phil Sayers onto the incredibly slippy stuff of the red paint there. Obviously we see him loop it around there, and will eventually get going. Porsche coming through, there we go, no issues there, but just showing how slippery, how hard it is to hold onto the car is outside of track limits there. Even with the track obviously slowly drying up, that's going to be incredibly wet, and has cost him a fair bit of time as well, and obviously a little bit of damage as well with the tussle with the other car through turn 1. We see also from that shot a tiny hint of a drier line there as well. Let's watch a replay of how that happened. Aston Martin on the inside, I believe, of Petty Jelinek, just edging ahead. The inside is the Aston Martin. Looks to be with a clear head onto the brakes, onto the slippy stuff for the pit exit as well. I think Phil Sayers keeps it tight. I think maybe too tight there. Obviously the Aston Martin washing up wide, unfortunately taps the Ferrari there.
Yeah, Phil trying to get aggressive to hold on to that place and did not work out. Car pretty much on ice as they got onto the paint, but they'll carry on. Hopefully that sliding on the tarmac didn't damage the tire too much. It's one thing running the tire in these cold, wet conditions. It's another thing to slide it sideways across the track. We can see the 81 Ferrari here trying to make some places back up, or trying to make some more places up. They're all right at one place. Make that 2 places now this race if they can hold on to it. Daniel Lindblom's going to try and get a cut back here, thinking by move to the inside. Ferrari just going a little bit defensive, but hold on to that 5th place now.
Indeed, just as the track goes greasy, see the cars be ever more confident through these corners, and who can take advantage of this? Who can realize the state of the track and realize the potential quicker than the others is Santon here. Also pits Matt Scott in the Ferrari again behind the zebra portion there, onto the brakes, obviously through the corner and onto the start finish straight. The Porsche ahead just using a bit more of the track exit as well. Sorry, not the start finish straight, this is the back straight heading up towards turn 8 now, onto the brakes. And it's important for these drivers to realize where the time is and how much they can push now, how much more can they use the curves, how much braver can they be on the brakes. And that'll come from feeling and looking at the times the faster drivers are doing. There's a bit of a wiggle there from the Porsche, keeps it in check though as they go through the hairpin there of turn 11 up towards turn 12. Lots of room at this corner here to gain some time if you can maximize your inputs and get towards the final corner with a bit of a run, and then obviously onto the brakes of your opponent. Perhaps the McLaren in the background as well, coming up rather quickly on the Ferrari of Matt Scott here. That's a Scapas in the 182 McLaren leader now of the AM classes. The Porsche ahead of Lindblom peels into the pits and I'm gonna guess changing his tires.
Yeah, we could see from the splitter cam from car behind them that they were on the wet tires. Matt Jordan into the pits now as well from the lead of the race. I can tell you the slick runners are now into the 36s, so we have just got to that crossover point where now the slick tire is the stronger of the 2. But it does mean, of course, all drivers pitting, giving up track position. They might not necessarily benefit from making one less pit stop at this race. It is very tight when you have these 45-minute stints. It does work out as 8 perfect stints, 8-second perfect stints. Of course, they'll never be perfect, as we can see looking back at Runar Butolfsson after that unfortunate drive-through penalty. Easy, we mentioned how easy it is to make a mistake into T1 at the start of this race, which we've seen a few of. It's also very easy to misjudge where your braking point is heading into the pits, carrying a bit too much speed and picking up that drive-through penalty. But yeah, as I was saying, it's your pit stop, your stint time's not gonna be perfect. You have to pit before you reach the 45-minute mark, and not quite sure if you end up here with sort of if it's very close and you have 15 to 20 seconds to spare, or whether you have to leave a whole minute off in a good stint. But of course you do make up some of that time as you sit in pit lane, as that doesn't contribute to your stint time. We see slick tires getting ever quicker. Orion Megan saying fastest lap of the race. First car into the 35s, starting to stretch their legs at the front. 6 seconds back to Alex Shahabi, but Daniel Lindblom putting on those new slick tires, trying to chase down Nick Commanders in the 77 Lexus.
Yeah, the Lexus just opening up those corners a little bit more there, but the Porsche obviously fresh from the pits, raring to go, getting those tyres to temp as quick as they can to battle and get past the Lexus for P11. Again, the Lexus a bit deeper there. Porsche keeping it nice and tidy. Emily Vogel here in 4th. Again, a couple of drivers using different lines. Some obviously wanting to stick to the dry line. Some of them just trying to open up the corners a bit more and keep it smooth and safe. Obviously, with Megan setting a 35.8, hopefully the drivers will see that and think maybe I can push a little bit more. I should try it on some of these corners and just feel where the grip comes. Phil Sayers, Anthony Victor Chappelle also now in the pits, P8, P9 for the AM class. So these two actually racing on track, gone from racing through the pit lane. Let's see who can obviously be the quicker one out, maybe with a shorter stop, unless they're both changing tyres, in which case it comes down to how brave can they be on the brakes on pit entry without picking up a warning. Back to Muska here in P3. On the back of Alex Shahabi, heading up towards the final corner now, obviously. Again, the Ferrari of Shahabi opening up the corner. Muska taking a straighter line to the outside there, onto the power for the start-finish straight. both fairly even on the exit, but you don't want to be too wide as well. Megan's setting a fast lap even more so now, 35.5, so shaving off the tenths in the race. We see a 5-second penalty also come through for car 77, which is Nick Manders, so my teammate, unfortunately, in the Lexus we saw earlier on battling as the Ferrari of Miska goes very wide there at turn 1.
Yeah, having a little bit of a slide as they push to catch up to Alex Shahabi. Still 2 places back from where they qualified on pole position. They'll be looking to try and right that, but it's not going to be easy. Throwing themselves into turn 4 now, turn 5. Both Ferraris, so there won't be too much difference, only sort of difference in setup between these 2 cars. Who's been a bit braver, who's running lower wing. But of course, slipstream for Eric will also have to contend with the dirty air, which will be, I imagine, quite prevalent around Valencia. Obviously, a more bike-orientated circuit with a lot more medium, long corners where you really rely on the aero. Not to mention, of course, the track's still greasy, still low grip. As cars slide around, we see a couple more cars in. Matt Goodger, Scott in the number 9, and Skapas in the 182. Both making their way into the pits. As we briefly see Alex Shahabi in the bottom right. But now coming into the final corner. Obviously, I know this is Emil Vogel that we're on board with heading through the final corner. You can see him putting a decent amount of steering lock, trying to get the car turned in, staying off of the curb on the exit of the final corner. As we see fastest laps from the field. Ori Megan's the first. Alex Shahabi saying fastest lap, then trying to get away from Eric. Eric saying an even quicker lap. Will be continuing to put on the pressure. Emil Vogel, will see the battle in front and is pushing to try and catch up, having a little moment on the exit of T1, using a little bit too much curb there.
Indeed, we saw earlier on just how much the Ferrari of Miska closes up on the brakes of Shahabi as they slide their way through that corner. As soon as they get onto the back of the blue Ferrari of Shahabi, they just have this obviously immense amount of jeté and a loss of grip, because they're obviously opening up turn 6 here for a good run on the back straight through the kink. Bit of a tricky corner if you don't know how the driver in front of you, drives through this corner, where they're going to brake, how they're going to brake. It's such a long corner, it's almost a double apex corner. A couple of different ways to approach that, obviously with changing conditions as well, lots to think about. Cut this one obviously on the inside as much as you dare with the jam curbs again onto the brakes before they happen here. Closes up massively to the maybe a bit more cautious Ferrari of Shahabi up ahead as they prepare to take a bit of a flick for this corner, really. It's a bit of an interesting one. As you drive it, use all the exit if you can, and yeah, straight away into the slipstream of the Ferrari ahead as well. Obviously, maybe looking to the inside here for the brakes. No, chooses to keep it open and get ready for the start-finish straight. You don't want to compromise yourself too much by diving or being too aggressive trying to attack that corner, because you compromise yourself massively on your run towards the start-finish straight. We can see as well visually how much drier the track is now. It's still greasy, but it certainly is a lot drier. Looks to the inside, does the red Ferrari of Muska there towards turn 1. Thinks better of it and tucks back behind the slipstream and continues their battle. Although a little bit of a wiggle again there on the exit, maybe looking briefly to capitalize on their position there, but no, sticks behind and practically pushes Shahabi through turn 2 there.
Yeah, the strength of Shahabi, from what I'm seeing here, they're getting good corner exits, just opening up a little bit of a gap every time they come out of the corner, and that's just giving them the breathing space into each braking zone, into the corner. Eric not close enough to make a move and just has to wait for a better opportunity, which they're really trying to push for. We've seen that in T1 as they ran a bit onto the runoff, but it really did bite them as a big snap, and any speed they carried into the corner was immediately gone on the exit. Matt Jordan, 9:22, saying the fastest lap, continuing to show the track ever improving, as Daniel Lindblom has gone to back of Nick Manders, but we know that Lexus, very quick in a straight line, can be very difficult to pass. Let's get some speed trap figures for both of these cars. Actually, Porsche not doing too badly, but remember, it does have the slipstream. 249 kilometers an hour for the Porsche, but 250 for the Lexus, just that 1 kilometer an hour faster.
Yeah, another fastest up there for Megan's. Those times are tumbling down. Obviously, Jordan said at half a second, 5/10 quicker fastest lap than the one previously. Obviously, Megan's a couple tenths below that now, as well as we see Muska opening up that corner even more, trying to use as much of the track as they can, carry all that momentum while staying within the track limits, and try staying on the drier stuff as well. Stuck behind Shahabi for now, and maybe feeling, with this dirty air, with their more attacks, are they using more of those dry tyres? As there's a bit of a snap there as well for Shahabi. Phil Say is driving through the pit lane now as well. Obviously, a lot of these drivers will need to double stint tyres, so it's crucial that you aren't pushing too hard and in the dirty air too much, and taking too much grip out of them too early to continue the battle. And I'm sure drivers, again, seeing those fastest lap times come down, by the way, knowing they can push a bit more. There's a lot more in the tracker with it being drier as well. These two getting so close together, practically almost touching each other. Still, the red Ferrari great on the brakes, but as you say, the exits come to Shahabi.
It just opens up that car length. The Ferrari wants to go for a move down the inside, closes back up, but just wasn't close enough at the start of the braking zone. Drivers will certainly be pushing on their tyres, still trying to get them up to temperature, but also trying not to grain them. Great run here through turn 12. Let's go through the long left-hander. Eric's going to get themselves to the inside, and we'll have the move nearly done. Just got to get their braking point and get a good exit out of the final corner on start-finish straight, which they do. And that's Eric now up to P2, trying to chase down Ori and Megan's next. The gap that they need to chase down, 7.5 seconds. And I can guarantee you that Ori Megan's is not going to make it easy.
No, certainly not. Does have a fair bit of pace, does Muska, but we'll have to see how long it'll take them to catch up and then try and get past as well. Will certainly be an interesting battle. Another interesting battle is Matt Scott here on the back of Petr Jelinek, who's on the back of Andy Thorpe. We see a Ferrari in the background have a snap as well. That's Anthony Victor Chappelle getting along past Matt Scott here. So three-way battle, four-way battle actually now, and yeah, Matt Scott having a moment, and Mustang just capitalised on it, which you have to do, especially at circuits like this. But Petr Jelinek chasing down Andy Thorpe there. Aston Martin on the back of the Ferrari. We saw Petr Jelinek, Mr. Consistent, I think was his nickname for some time. Certainly going to be waiting for his opportunity in that stable Aston Martin. Quite close to the Ferrari as they come through turn 12. I don't think close enough, though, for anything to happen through the last corner. I say that the Ferrari is quite tight there. The Aston Martin looking to try and get around the outside. Covered off by the Ferrari, though, as they get onto the start-finish straight. Has the Ferrari compromised himself, though, with that tighter line? I think we'll have to wait and see. Looks pretty obvious with obvious amount of overspeed there for the Aston Martin. Pulling alongside the Ferrari now across the start-finish line. Has he got enough of a lap onto the brakes, obviously, for turn one? The Ferrari trying to swoop around the outside, and indeed does, and keeps it all within track limits. The Aston Martin being slowed down with that tight line has allowed Chappelle with the run in the Mustang up towards turn 2. Unfortunately, we'll have to concede that for now. I say that there's another bit of an overlap, almost going side by side through turn 3 there, but the order remains the same for now.
Yeah, Thorpe defending the final corner, kind of sort of showing that they're feeding the pressure from Petr Jelinek as they head through the middle part of the lap. But Petr nearly getting caught out there, trying to go for a move. Nearly fell victim to the car behind, taking advantage of it as Matt Scott has closed the gap back up after that mistake on the previous lap, and will sort of now be putting both the Aston Martin and the Mustang in the awkward position where you're trying to fight, try and get an overtake on the car in front of you, but at the same time you're having to defend from the car behind you, and it's just making it that much more difficult to get a move done, as you can't take the same risks. Well, you gotta think twice about making the same risks, same attempts at overtaking as they come towards the final turn again. Thorpe just running that tighter line as they all bunch up into the final corner, concertina up, and then they'll spread out again as they come on to the start-finish straight. Is anyone gonna have a run this time around? Where they got to be single file through turn 1. The Aston Martin is closing in the slipstream, but wasn't close enough this time to get alongside, using a bit more of the runoff that they're, but still within what they're allowed to on the exits. We see another fastest lap from Eric as they try and chase down Ori and Megan's. They were 0.6 of a second quicker. That gap is closing down at the front. Though how long will Eric be able to close up before the end of this stint? We have a 15-second time penalty coming in for car 92, currently residing in 14th place for causing a collision on lap 1.
Yeah, a little nudge there for the Mustang from Matt Scott there in the background. Interestingly as well, track is green now, so it is technically dry, but I've just seen on the weather forecast, Scotty, 30 minutes is the prediction for rain. So we'll have to wait and see, A, if that comes, and B, how long that'll last. That'll certainly throw a spanner in the works, I think, for a lot of these drivers with their strategy, but maybe it's actually a good thing in disguise. Obviously, trying to deal with these dry tyres, getting up to temp through the wet period, it means they can get rid of those tyres now and get some nice, fresh, wet ones that they can rely on. So certainly will be, I think it's a good thing. As Matt Scott goes very wide there at turn 12. Onto the bumpy stuff there. Luckily, keeps it going in a straight line, but has cost him out a bit of confidence perhaps, and certainly a bit of time to the Mustang ahead, who's luckily slightly held back by the Aston Martin and Ferrari ahead, so can't run away too far, because he has got 2 cars in front of him as they run down the start-finish straight. Aston Martin looking to the inside, choosing to have that line over the slipstream. Very interesting choice there, I think, onto the brakes.
That rain you mentioned is very, very interesting. From ACC, of course, it only gives you a 30-minute forecast. You have no idea what it's going to do beyond 30 minutes. But from once the rain is 30 minutes away, you know exactly what it is going to do. So in 30 minutes, or well, just under now, we will have light rain, in which will be the second stint of the race, or technically third for those that have already pitted, which is the majority of the field at this point. Everyone from 5th place downwards has made a pit stop, all at different points. So it could be very interesting. Light rain isn't normally enough to make a change onto wet tyres. So it's going to be interesting to see, is that rain going to get heavier and necessitate a tyre change? Or is it only going to be light rain and really leave the teams in a difficult decision on whether to swap back to the wet tyres or to stick it out on a set of slicks?
Indeed, and not only that, obviously, if it does rain heavy enough where drivers will need to change tyres, it's kind of a reset. It consolidates any advantage anyone's got by staying out, really. If they all pit, and change to wet tyres again, they're all on new tyres, they're all on resetting their stint timers. So it's, in a way, it's a reset. Liam Breathless would be able to keep a hold of P6 instead of maybe dropping down the order as his stint goes shorter than Scapas, for instance. So it will be very interesting who can hold it on as well. But obviously with those grain tyres, potentially, it might be trickier to hold on in the wet than normally. These two going side by side, by the Chappelle and the Aston Martin of Pitty Jelinek. It's around through the long left-hander of turn 8, obviously through the little kink of turn 9, onto the brakes eventually for turn 11. I'm saying this, are we in sector 1 actually, or are we?
Yep, sector 1.
That just shows how little I recognise parts of this track. Either way, they were battling, albeit in the wrong corners.
Yeah, the Mustang getting the move done, and Jelinek had to be careful there. The Mustang had the move done, had to worry about not losing another place to Matt Goodger. You could see was trying to maybe get alongside on the exit of turn 2, but just, it would have been too risky as we head into turn 3. Very awkward corner that kind of can't string the field into single file. And look at that in the background, the leader catching up to this battle, which is going to be quite frustrating for the leaders. They try and hold on to the gap that Eric is closing in on. We've seen multiple fastest lap after fastest lap, the gap down to 4 seconds now, as Eric took another half a second out of Megan's last lap. You can guarantee when Megan's reaches this traffic next time around, they are going to lose even more time. But this traffic will be trying to not lose too much time in letting Megan's pass, and maybe just catch an opportunity when the car in front tries to move aside to let Megan's through. They'll be trying to follow Megan's through to pick up a cheeky spot.
Indeed, and again, at the fastest laps, the driver's really pushing. Now I would say Muska really pushing to catch up to Megan's. And Megan's, hindered. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars ahead of them. So we'll have a job to do. Sorry, 5 cars, I can indeed count. So, even if they get through one, they're going to have a job to do to get through the next. So, bit of a tricky spot, really, particularly as these cars are, battling and they won't make it easy per se, but obviously they will have to adhere to blue flags when Megan's decide to try and get past. And hopefully, or they'll hope that they can lose less time than their competitors and you know, keep up with them as Megan's gets past a Porsche. Next up is the number 9 Ferrari of Matt Good-Giscott, who's got to be not wanting to do this and let the Aston Martin of Petty let go, really. As Matt Jordan again replaces the fast lap. Does have some serious pace as Matt Jordan's first top 4, incredible pace. And yeah, it will be good to watch Petty here in that Aston Martin calmly going around turn 12. Again, the Ferrari of Matt Good-Giscott going a bit deeper, taking a bit more of the exit curb. So head up towards the final corner. And again, the Ferrari of Andy Thorpe really tight going through the final corner. And again, that will certainly cost him a good amount of speed down the start finish straight. The Mustang, again, different line, going wide because of it, deep because of it. Hopefully hasn't picked up too many track warnings too early. Goes to the inside of the Ferrari and simply drives past him.
Using the straight line speed that the Mustang has will get the move done into T1. The Ferrari maybe thinking if they can come back, but it doesn't seem like it. The Aston Martin running wide, maybe trying to close in with that mistake, but eventually has to run out wide to let Megan's through, which they do so. We're about 14 minutes away from the top, well, I would say top for making their pit stops. Emil Vogel has gone into the pits early. Wonder if they're trying to set up a different strategy with the rain coming in maybe about 20 minutes now, offsetting themselves from the rest of the grid, kind of putting themselves on a third different strategy from the within the field.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tricky strategy to manage as well, because they've got a 5-second time penalty. So that pit stop now will be 5 seconds longer than they'd want it to be, obviously. The Porsche, by the way, taking advantage of Megan's lapping this pack, has obviously gotten past Matt Good-Giscott, almost, we saw, got past Petty as well through Sector 1. But certainly will be looking to get past these two cars and get onto the back of Victor Chappelle. And Christian Scapas obviously lead ahead of him in the AM class there, where Megan's through this pack at last, indeed. Yep, so has a fair bit of clear air now to really put the hammer down and build up that gap again. That Meska to Meska. Obviously, Meska might actually be really lucky if you know, these cars pit when the rain comes, because that's a pack that they won't have to pass and would have gained time on Megan's, as Vogel now comes out of the pits as well, and just ahead of that pack, luckily.
Oh yeah, they'll be very happy with that, with the clean air, but they'll have to get those tyres up to the operating window. Of course, there are tyre warmers in these GT3 cars, but there are about 10 or so degrees cooler than what you ideally want, as Peter Jelinek gets their nose on the inside of Andy Thorpe through turn 3, but that's left them vulnerable as Santon trying to get to the inside of turn 4. Trying to get the move done now, squeezes Jelinek out on the exit curb, has the traction, and then Jelinek has to back out and is maybe going to let Good-Giscott through along the outside, getting optimistic, trying to follow Eric through is Scott. They'll be the outside here into the left-hander. They nearly come together. Much later on the brakes is Jelinek. Looks like Peter will hold on to P13, but still losing a place there to Santon as they were trying to make that move on Thorpe.
Indeed, a long way to go yet, so lots of battling to be had still. Michael Horrick, yeah, on the outside here, the Ferrari. Lots of Ferraris today, and they all seem to be doing rather well. I know these two are slightly further down the field, but still keeping it on track, keeping it all nice and tidy for the most part. So they can use that inside curb now with confidence. Similarly, the outside curb, no issues there. But that rain is coming. Well, we think it's coming. It's forecast to come, and that's going to also, I think, just upset maybe the balance, obviously, of the car, but obviously of the driver's, you know, feet and mentally, and how much they've adjusted to driving in the dry, and now we'll have to revert again to driving in the wet. Be a bit more careful on the brakes, smoother on the steering, and adjust their lines accordingly as well. It can be a funny thing to mentally switch between, and some drivers will be better than others, and will be able to capitalize on that overlap where some drivers are still getting accustomed to it. That's where they can really also make some gains. The BMW that slides through turn 12, obviously avoids any horrible curbs, luckily, and heads their way towards the final corner. Does have obviously those three pro cars, those three cars with white number cards on the leaderboard, as we get a wave there from Fuskin, I believe, on the driver cam, to deal with. So he has to get past three cars before he can get onto the back of Santon.
Yeah, which isn't ideal. I've also just noticed the rain in 30 minutes will be moderate rain, which is kind of that switchover point of, oh yeah, we're definitely going to have to change over to wet tyres. And so now the team's thinking, well, you've now got a decision to make. Do you change tyres at the pit stop, or do you just fuel up, short fill the car to only go to when the rain is heavy enough for wet tyres? The strategy is really interesting, and I tell you what, I would not want to be one of the drivers trying to drive and figure this strategy out as Santon gets into the back of Andy Thorpe there, who's gone sliding off into the runoff area. That's going to be an almost starting penalty for Santon. It's going to make that gap for Matthias Fueskin a little easier to close in on.
Yeah, certainly is. I think a lot of the drivers will just probably drive to the pit lane just to extend their stint. So when they're changing tyres, their stop is shorter. Let's have a look at that replay of the Andy Thorpe there. Obviously, again, on a bit of a tighter line, the Porsche behind just tags him, and it's just downhill. The car's loaded up. There's some steering angle, and obviously it's just gone very wide. And that red and white painting there, that paint on the outside of the track that has zero grip at all. So as soon as you're onto that, you're on a journey, really. Luckily, the gravel came eventually to arrest the car and sort it out as Andy slides his way there through the corner, dealing with as well maybe some overheated tyres perhaps, as Matt Scott comes through the final corner, leading this three-way pack then for now up into P11, 3 seconds or just under that now away from P10. That's Victor Chappelle, Anthony Victor Chappelle, sorry, the Mustang we saw just ahead we saw earlier. Here's Skapas, a Mustang, sorry, McLaren, on the back of the Lexus of Nick Manders, who also had a bit of a recovery as well, wanting to get up the order a bit more. Skapas to chase down Vespers, goes to the outside of the final corner. Lexus obviously compromised on the inside there. They go side by side, a bit of a slide there from the McLaren as well as they eventually get onto the power, chasing down the Mustang now into the Lexus into the slipstream as they head towards the first corner. But I think the Lexus in this scenario is simply just going to drive away with all its grunt.
Yeah, both these drivers have made pit stops this race, but Skapas made their pit stop about 3 laps later than Nick Manders in front, so they'll have the tyre advantage. They didn't have to bring their slick tyres through as much of the rain, through the cold conditions where the tyre would just be getting grained, would be getting damaged. So their tyres will be in better condition, giving more grip. That's why they're putting a lot of pressure on, as we see they'll coming together here between Michael Horak and Phil Sayers, as they were fighting over 17th and 18th.
Let's have a little replay then, a little watch of how these two Ferraris came together. Obviously, Phil Sayers there in the background, slightly wider entry to, I believe, turn 8. And the just had a bit more speed, got into the inside of the Ferrari, the red Ferrari, and yeah, they came together there. They continue really again in that order they started with, so maybe just letting each other go there.
Yeah, really awkward collision just as the 76 was running wide. Sayers thought, seeing the opportunity, got their nose along the inside, and then they just converged together on the exit as Horak came a little bit tighter. Sayers had to run out a little bit wide on the tighter line. Yeah, unfortunate between those two. We'll come back to Nick Manders, still trying to defend from the McLaren, who I mentioned might be getting a little bit frustrated, trying to carry speed through T1. Manders is going to defend the inside for T2. That McLaren braking much later on the outside, trying to go for a cutback, but Manders parking the car nicely on the apex, and too much curb for Skapas to really get moved on there. And they're going to have to really, with the straight line speed of that Lexus, and Manders are defending well at this point, so we'll have to wait for a potential mistake from the Lexus driver.
Skapas just opened up these corners, I think, a little bit more than the Lexus is, so maybe just a bit more confident in the setup of the car as they get onto the brakes for turn 8. Fairly even, I say fairly even. McLaren almost pushing the Lexus through that corner. Obviously a slightly wider exit to compensate there. Cuts the inside there very nicely. I think the Lexus just going a bit wider there. Onto the brakes now for the tricky hairpin of 11. Long corner, I think the McLaren sliding slightly as they go through that corner there. Again, using all the curb here on the way in and obviously on the way out. Onto the brakes, kick it in, get settled. Maybe the Lexus still in wet weather mode. as they head towards the final corner.
See, Lexus still getting good drive off the final corner, and then we'll just pull away with its straight line speed. Lexus fastest in the speed trap. Speed's getting a little bit quicker as the conditions dry up, the track getting ever quicker. 254 kilometers per hour for that Lexus, but they'll mistake in T1 maybe. And the McLaren again trying around the outside, but it's just too long of a way to go. Probably also struggling a little bit for grip off the racing line there. But you can see how much pressure the McLaren is putting on, trying to get a cutback there, but just turned the car a little too much. The rear end not obliging, having a bit of a slide and losing the momentum they needed to get alongside. Look in the background, there's the leader. Orion Meggans is approaching, but Meggans will have to pit within the next 4.5 minutes. So give a couple of laps. Does Meggans maybe pit a lap sooner so that they don't have to pass the two cars fighting in front of them? Or do they push it to the final lap even if they get held up a little bit?
Yeah, that certainly will be a good question, and Meggans will be able to judge that, obviously, depending on their pace and how they approach these two cars and watching those cars. Really was putting the pressure on Manders with Scappas, pressuring so much that Manders is taking these different lines that ultimately compromise them, and that gives Scappas the opportunity to keep up with them and, continue to attack. And these two really opening up. Turn one is the Ferrari there of Horak, maybe to try to get rid of the slipstream that he's giving to Sayers there, as Meggans indeed does pit. So taking potentially your little advice there, pitting for now and just getting out of the way of those two cars battling. That was Manders and Scappas, and doesn't have to deal with that. Obviously, he is conscious that Muska is catching up to them, and Muska seemingly driving in clear air. That's something that Meggans wants to be doing, and maximising wherever they can. And by pitting, that's a pretty good way to do it.
Yeah, now, of course, Muska will be catching up to the same pack of cars, but they'll probably be able to run out their entire stint timer before they do catch up, so won't be faced with quite the same decision. The question is, what does Meggans do in the pit stop? We do have that rain coming in about 15 minutes. They're already on the pit exit, so let me just see that pit stop time, 17 seconds stopped in the pits. So they've held on to the same set of slick tires, and they'll be trying to carry them through. As we see battle here, Santon trying to hold on in front of the Mustang, or maybe getting themselves in front of the Mustang for P10 as they fight. The Mustang did pit about 2 laps later than the Porsche, so maybe having a little bit more pace. But no, yeah, Santon did get that overtake done in the previous lap and is now trying to pull away. But of course, Mustang, with its straight line speed, with the slipstream as well now, will be trying to just stick as close as it can and maybe get back past their opportunity when, of course, these teams potentially switch drivers.
Dude, I did just see the wiper there come on from the Ferrari, but I think it's just they've left it on manual and haven't turned it off and haven't noticed it, which is fair enough when you're focusing on corners and braking zones, and you don't necessarily look at what's directly on your dashboard. So because I saw that and thought it was raining, but it's not. The track is fast now, so a little bit more evolution there, and it's all going to be washed away when this rain does come. Currently, we're still sitting at 30 minutes, and obviously, I say that it's just flicked to 10 minutes there. So 10 minutes time, we'll start with light rain before eventually upgrading to some moderate rain. So maybe there's a bit more scope there to hang it out there on those dry tires and working it into their strategy, making those stint timers as long as they can, reducing the stops and gaining any track position they can using the pit strategy there. Michael Horek either taking some major avoiding action or maybe with a technical moment there, or with just some dirty air.
That was definitely avoiding action. As the drivers take different lines, the driver behind is thinking, oh, can I maybe make a move up the inside? And they're thinking about committing to that move. They're actually side by side coming through turn 12 as well. Sayers getting in front, And, oh, that was very early on the brakes from the Ferrari in front. I wonder if Sayers was maybe trying to let them through for some reason. And instead it hasn't worked out. They've had to take that avoiding action. Luckily they did so, and they didn't have a crash, but yeah, not ideal for Horak. Bit confusion between those two. As we see our front two runners into the pit, as Scappa still on the back of Nick Manders.
Yeah, indeed. Manders keeping Scappas at bay. Scappas wanting to catch up to Vespers, who is not too far away, actually, really. 5 seconds or so there on the board. And Vespers obviously probably trying to keep an eye on Scappas' times. And obviously, I'm sure they've got their teammate doing some massive out stint time as everything else. But these kind of races, when you're offset with stints, you never really know to the end or to the final stint. And then you can go, actually, yeah, we are ahead of that car. But again, anything can happen. It can rain, it can stop. Anything can happen. So we'll have to wait and see as far as that is concerned. Jordan with the fastest lap now up to P3. Muska leading the way still, obviously, with Megan's stopping earlier on the race. 5 seconds is the gap there. So we'll be wanting to build that out as much as they can.
Yeah, difference in strategy once again. 8 seconds shorter on the pit stop for the number 70. So they'll obviously have less fuel on board. They'll have to give that time up when the rain comes. They come in to switch to, well, no, actually they won't have to give that time up because the fuel will be covered by the tire change. So they've got themselves track position. Megans is going to have to run the rest of this stint with more fuel, thus having a heavier car being a bit slower, and has also given up track position with the longer pit stop. It's been a bit of a strategy blunder there for the number 8, as we kind of see what is almost a replay, but this time they have got to the inside, as Scappa's a little quite aggressively bit of contact. Lexus trying to hold it around the outside, becomes the inside, but getting squeezed out by the McLaren, who runs in a little bit deep, just about gets the car pulled up before running wide. And Lexus now is trying to attack back, trying to get the place back, but the McLaren going very defensive into turn 7. I want to say that is. Lexus really getting aggressive, as was the McLaren trying to get through. Like immediately defensive, Lexus trying to go for the outside. I don't think that's gonna quite work the long way around there. Running a little bit wide is Manders. But yeah, very aggressive overtake there from the McLaren.
Yeah, went for a cutback and made it work whether or not the Lexus was going to let it happen. So did get through at turn 2 that time, as we saw unfold. Manders, obviously, let's watch it replay actually. So obviously starts with turn 1, having your run set up for turn 2. McLaren really is on the back of the Lexus straight away coming through turn 1, a lot more confident, carrying a lot more speed, forces the Lexus to be defensive. McLaren goes to the cutback and it's just not quite worked out to be totally clear, but they did get past, so there was enough speed there to get it done, as we see them here. Oh, sorry.
Manders just ran that little bit wide, just left a car's width, and the McLaren, maybe a bit frustrated, was not going to wait for a second opportunity, was taking it there and then.
Indeed, and now obviously stuck behind the McLaren there's a Lexus now, so let's see what they can do. Oh, and actually, is that netcode? I don't know what's happening. Here we go. Mustang still on the track, still pointing in the right direction, isn't drifting through turn 1, but is about to lose that position to Petr Jelnek. Maybe Chappelle, if I was to speculate, maybe seeing if he had connection issues, would probably be a bit more cautious around other cars, and that would go a bit easier, I think, is what's happening. They might have disconnected completely now. Possibly. They've gone. Nope, they're there. Interesting.
Yeah, they ran out wide, whether by choice or by mistake. It's unclear with their connection issues. It seems to be getting a little bit more stable now. Hopefully that is just a little hiccup from their internet. You can tell it's still a little bit there from the line the car took through the final corner. But yeah, hopefully that's just a momentary blip rather than a more permanent issue. Patulson here running in 19th, has had a difficult race so far, picking up that drive-through penalty during their first pit stop, and will be trying to make up the time. Let me just have a look. They'll be coming into the pits within a couple of minutes. Maybe not this time round, but next time round for sure. Let's come through the final corner, coming to the end of their stint timer. And yeah, just running the one more lap, which they can. Remember, we are only about 4 minutes until the light rain begins. Still a little more than 10 minutes away from the moderate rain. So drivers will be keeping an eye on that, as quite a few cars will be coming up to their pit window soon. Those that stayed out longer in the sort of opening 10-15 minutes before changing off of their first wet tires, they're going to be in a stronger position for this stint. And yeah, they could potentially be making a pit stop up when that rain does come, as we see Daniel Lindblom now on the back of Leon Vespers. Not a battle within the same class, but if Lindblom does have the pace, they'll be looking to get through. Lindblom 1.1 seconds quicker last time around, so Vespers seems to be struggling here. Will the Porsche get to the inside? They will indeed. Vespers not defending this one too hardly, realising the Porsche has the space. It'd be better not to lose any time. It's actually coming into the pits anyway, so yeah, no point losing time fighting a battle that you weren't really in to begin with.
Yeah, but that's such an awkward pit stop, isn't it? In Brest there, the rain hasn't quite come. Maybe they're just resetting their stint timer and getting going, and maybe they're putting in a little bit of fuel. So tricky to do until the rain comes and you can actually make that decision of what it's like. We see a 10-second penalty problem there for car 92 as well. That's Santon here, who's actually now got a total of 25 seconds penalty to serve. So basically, they've got to do a minute stop, really, which is really going to hinder their race, but it's certainly going to be good for Chappelle and Prespers and Fuskin when Santon falls into the lap after the pit stop. But that gives Skapas, a nice clear run then to Vespers, really, who was obviously leading the race before he did his little stop that we were talking about momentarily ago. And actually, Scotty, sorry, the rain has been upgraded again. So not light rain, it's going to go moderate rain straight away, and then moderate plus, whatever that means, at 30 minutes. So, or between 10 and 30 minutes, I should say. So,
yeah, well, the moderate plus means that it's still moderate rain, but it's heavier than what we'll see in 10 minutes, which you would expect. In 10 minutes, it is just switching to moderate, so be the sort of lightest moderate rain you can get, if you get what I mean, and it'll get a little bit heavier throughout the stint. But that plus is maybe sort of is indicating that in 30 minutes, the rain will still sort of be sustained. We'll not be getting to like the end of the wet period. It will be a little bit longer. As we'll see. And within a couple of minutes, the light rain come down. We'll have like 8 minutes of that light rain before it transitions to moderate rain. Yeah, but it does look like we'll be getting into a decent wet weather stint here, which might be quite quite useful for the teams as they switch on to wet tires. They'll be able to run wet tires for a little while, for a couple of stints, and that of course saves them from running one of their restricted slick tires they can then save for later on in the race, and hopefully skip out on running those double stints and running worn tires for close to an hour and a half if they were to run 2 full double stints.
Indeed, certainly Santon here on the back of Vogel. An interesting battle, because it's not really a battle. Obviously, different classes. I'm sure they can battle all they want, but Santon's got a long stop ahead of him, really. So Vogel, I think, might be seeing that 25 seconds next to Santon's name and thinking, "Don't bother, like getting in my way and impeding me or anything like that, or forcing me to defend. I've got my own little thing to catch up to Manders and battle with, if that makes sense." Sure, the drivers can do what they want. I'm just saying, if I was Vogel and I saw a car with 25 seconds try to attack me, I'd be quite annoyed, to be honest. But if they've got the pace difference, yeah, sure, whatever, go for it. As they round their way through the long right-hander, they're up towards turn 12 now. Going to be interesting as well when the rain comes, because obviously we've seen the cars perform in the drive for the most part. We don't know, maybe if some drivers are more comfortable in the rain, maybe the cars are set up slightly more to be better in the rain. And we'll have to wait and see, what maybe surprises us.
Well, we won't have to wait much longer. The rain has just started as these drivers come through the final corner. Santon, though, will be pitting at the end of this lap. That's one thing. If you're a teammate to Vogel, you want to tell them, look, they're at their end of their stint timer. They're pitting at the end of this lap. So if they go for something, which you really wouldn't expect them to do if they're pitting at the end of this lap, there's no point in them going for a move and costing each other time. They're going to be pitting, so just let them go. Don't lose as little time as possible if that situation arrives, as we see Nick Manders into the pits.
Indeed. And probably changing to wet tyres, serving their 5-second penalty, and maybe swapping drivers as well. We'll have to wait and see. Abruzzi going slightly wide there, experiencing the loss of grip immediately. The track's gone to greasy. It's not quite damp or wet, but it certainly is a lot slippier than they are used to. We'll see those lap times come down. I'm sure we'll see the temperatures of the tyres come down, the pressures come down. But for now, they might as well capitalise on the pressures they've got and keep trying to get those laps in until obviously they stop for their tyre change. Another thing as well, the pit entry, as we see Alex Shahabi there get on by a lapped car, the pit entry is going to be slippier, and it may surprise some of the drivers when they get on the brakes in a straight line and either come flying in a lot quicker than they expect, or maybe lose the rear end in a not nice way. Perhaps so. Going to be interesting, and obviously every little helps when you're trying to undercut someone or overcut someone. If you're a little bit longer going into the pit lane, a second or so, that can make all the difference when you're on the track.
Something that will make a difference, and I do apologise for the news I'm about to deliver you, but Nick Manders has maybe taken your advice a little too far and has ended up speeding into pit lane. And the 77 Lexus will be taking a drive-through penalty within the next few laps, and we'll be hoping not to repeat that mistake when they come in to serve it. But yes, drivers will have that sort of difficulty of judging the grip as we come into the pits. We mentioned it for those coming in on the wet tyres in the first place, as we see more and more drivers come into the pits as they get to the end of their stint timers. It's still a bit too early to pit. The track is only greasy, as you mentioned, the rain is only light. You don't want wet tyres. They will start to overheat, they will wear out more in this earlier stage, but if you pitted on the earlier side of that sort of those initial pit stops, you don't have the choice. You're at the end of your stint timer, you have to come in now. If you waited a bit longer, you've got the options. You could wait it out until it is the right moment to pit, and that could be a very big advantage for those that have that strategic option.
Indeed, certainly is. Strategy is so interesting, and it's always, I feel like I always get surprised, at least I do, when a driver is so much quicker overall on strategy than the rest of the field. And you think, oh, it's almost obvious in retrospect, but you never realize and think about it at the time. But it is a tricky decision to make. A lot of these teams obviously trying to do it on the fly, and which isn't easy to do. As you see the Ferrari there get by Emily Vogel, that's actually Michael Horek, I'm gonna say.
Vogel has had some issue. That's quite a bit of damage on the front end for them.
Oh, sorry, Scotty. You mentioned a drive-through for Nick Manders, and mentioning how he tried to avoid the same thing again, but I think he's failed in that, as he does have a stop-go 30 to number 7 instead. Yeah. Speechless.
I'll let you come up with the thoughts for that one.
I'll leave them now until I get into the car with Nick. But a lot of the drivers in the pit lane now, as you say, running out of time in their stint timer, having to change tyres and get onto the wets now for a long stint. It has gone damp, has the track now, so it wouldn't be a terrible choice to be on the wets. But Muska here, I think, staying out for now, if I remember rightly, and just going obviously as much as they can and reducing any stints in the future.
Indeed. So yeah, we see here Eric still leading the way. They were one of the cars that started on slick tires and didn't pit, then didn't have to pit when the rain stopped at the start of the race. So they are free on stint timer to pit whenever they need to. We've just had another stop-go penalty come in for the 301 Mustang this time. I believe that's the double yellow motorsports car. So yeah, issues for them. Matt Jordan here, one of the cars have already pitted onto wet tyres. They did make a pit stop at the start of the race. They were constrained by that stint timer. And yeah, maybe not ideal for them. Now the track still greasy, and we just seen the 81 coming into the pits. I've just done a little bit of investigating, and yes, that 81 did crash into the wall coming out of, let me just check the corner number, out of turn 11, lost the rear end, spun into the wall. And that is sort of the risk of staying out now. You're trying to balance risk versus reward. You stay out now, you wait longer. When you change onto wet tires, they will be in a better condition and you will have a faster stint. But you've got to not bin the car while you're still on the slicks. You've got to keep the pace up in these very challenging conditions. And we see our leader Eric has pitted, but Orion Meggins has stayed out. They've realised they've already lost the lead from that sort of previous pit stop. So they're trying to do something a little bit different now, see if they can put themselves in place to retake the lead.
Indeed. Still with the fastest lap though, and I think that'll stay there for some time, obviously with the wet weather and with the rain. Matt Jordan doesn't look to be too far behind. Muska actually, after starting the time, actually just adjusting there to a little bit more than I thought it was, showing us 1 second when I first looked at it. But yeah, Matt Jordan not far behind, and this seems to be the order then. Obviously, the big reset, if you like. Now the rain's come, everyone's swapped over to all the same tires at the same time, and the stint time's fairly close together, to be honest. So Meggins leads the way, as you said. Miska with a massive gap, actually. How have they done that? Or have I completely missed something and Meggins has stayed out? And so I was
Meggins is yet to pit. Goes on for another lap. The last lap was a 140.5 for Meggins. 144.4 that time around. Bear in mind, put that in context. Matt Jordan last lap, 137.7. And Eric on their in lap did a 145.7. Having to slow down for the pit entry was only a second slower. So that gives you an idea of how much Meggins is sort of starting to struggle, how much pace is dropping off. So yeah, we'll have to just keep an eye on that. Of course, the idea is that when they switch onto the wet tires, the track, they haven't pushed the wet tires through the greasy, damp stage of the track where they're going to overheat, they're going to slide around more and just wear the tire out more. And so, and also building an offset so that they'll have much more grip than their competitors, able to make the time up and then also have the grip available to them to make some overtakes to regain track position. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this goes out. Matt Jordan, again, 138.4. They gained 6 seconds on Orion Meggins last lap. So the wet tire, certainly the better tire at this stage as the moderate rain has arrived. The track is wet. But yeah, interesting strategy here from the number 8.
Indeed, there certainly is. And obviously, being in the wet and having that nice tire delta, you're going to, cars are slightly slower in the wet, obviously, but that gives you a bit more time between corners, a bit more time to get alongside, and it's slight, but it obviously all adds up, and with the tyre difference as well, that might just be enough for Meggins to then, or the other drivers to then set something up in the wet weather that wouldn't be possible in the dry weather. We see Meggins obviously entering the pit lane. Hopefully they've done it in time and under the limit, as we see the Mustang in the back, and also slide their way through the pit entry lane, and again onto the pit limiter and to their box to stop. Scappas then, by the way, seems to be now leading the AM class. We did see Vespers there lead the class for some time after having a fantastic start, obviously on the wet tyres. Now dropped to second in class in front of Santon, who isn't actually that far behind on track either. So Scappas obviously being able to stay out and do that one stop instead of a couple stops that Vespers had to do. But I think overall it still worked out fairly well for Vespers. Finds himself second, unfortunately. We see Johnny Ashley also behind in the Lexus. I'm sure he'll be very much in his happy place. Sorry, that's not in the Lexus. I don't know where I got that from. It must be a track position thing I just didn't even take into account. That's Nick Manders. Sorry, not Johnny Ashley. And sliding their way through that corner there. I believe that's turn 6. I'm going to say, yep. Through the kick of turn 7.
Yeah, so Orion Meggins does come out of the pits, will drop to 3rd place, but they will have the newest tyres of the entire field. Can they use that to their advantage, make up a couple of places, or will it turn out to have been the wrong decision and they'll have to settle for P3? Remember, Matt Jordan one of those cars that started on wet tyres, built a lead out front, and then pitted onto slicks, then ran those slicks until the rain started again. They're up in P2. They've shown that that strategy wasn't necessarily the wrong call. The big difference, I would say, is that they waited before they pitted. They were one of the last people to pit from the wet tyre onto the slick. They've only made 2 pit stops. Vespera is another one of those people that did strategy. They were one of the first people to pit, and they've had to make 3 pit stops because of that. That's probably where they've lost the AM lead, but hey, they're still in a decent place. We've got 4 hours and 55 minutes of the race to go, plenty of time. Who knows what the rain will do throughout the rest of this race, what strategy opportunities might appear for drivers to get clever and, yeah, take advantage of them.
Indeed, and speaking of taking things, I think I just heard our race director mention we'll have a quick break, change over some commentators, and then we'll be right back.
Welcome back to the final round of the oNiD 2025 Abruzzi Endurance Championship here at Valencia. As you can see, the rain has been falling once again after we had started the rain in started the race in light rain conditions. It dried up, but it has returned to give our drivers some headaches. Sam has stepped out of the comm box to head down to his team's garage, maybe have some words over the radio to Nick Manders after picking up not just a drive-through but a stop-go 30 penalty. But replacing him is the wonderful Ben Myatt. How you doing, Ben?
I'm good. I'm not replacing Sam. Sam's irreplaceable. I'm just here to talk nonsense like usual. Looking forward to seeing. Oh, that was a big twitch for Muxka out of the final turn there. It's a wet oNiD race. Who'd have thought? It's good to see these guys starting as they intend to, or finishing as they've gone through the season, really.
Yeah, despite now a 10-second lead at the front of the field, Eric pushing on ahead of Matt Jordan. They'll change driver in the number 8, Robin Hoogeland has stepped in for Orion Meggins. It'll be interesting to see how their pace compares to not just Meggins, but well, we can't really compare to Meggins with the different conditions, but the 2 drivers in front, our 2 leaders, by the way, 138.2.3 for the front two respectively, 140.0 for Hooglers. They are dropping down a bit, and Alex Shahabi with the 138.9 is closing in. So yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. We're looking back at Marvin Butson as they fight the 81 Ferrari round. They've had a bit of a difficult end to the previous stint. As the rain was starting to fall, they were still on the slick tyres. Marvin dropped the car coming out of turn 11, one of the right-handers coming up, and managed to collect the barrier, had to come in and repair the damage. That led to them having a 1 minute and 11-second pit stop time. Yeah, so quite a bit longer, losing 40 seconds to damage repair. Yeah, and it was this right-hander that they're just coming out of that they crashed into on the right-hand side wall. So difficult mistake, but still plenty of race to go to try and make up some time, as we've actually had an incident for the number 8. They are spun around in that turn 11. Hopefully we can pick up a replay to see what happened here.
It's a little bit out on the curb there and dipping the wheels into that wetter patch, just breaks the traction in a second loop as he tries to get on the throttle again. It's slightly red-faced, I imagine, down in that Ferrari as he tries to get going. Has dropped down behind Alex Shahabi there, so he's in a position to fight back, so that's something at least.
I'm not sure if fighting back will be possible for them. Of course, the tyres will not be happy with those spins. Was coming up to that Olaf bad edge there and just sort of coming up, maybe had to take a little bit of avoiding action as they misjudged the braking zone behind the BMW. Gone to the curb, went for once, not just one spin, but a second spin, as you mentioned. Very difficult in these conditions to spin the car round 180-degree spin, but not go for a full 360 in these difficult conditions. Dave Wade has stepped into the 51 Aston Martin, though they themselves have found themselves at the back of the grid. Track looking to, oh yeah, 3 minutes in their pit stop at 11 minutes ago. So difficulties there for the number 51.
Yeah, that's a long old stop by any estimation there. About 8 seconds back there. They've got a lot of race to make that up and make places, but it's never nice to be down at the back end of the field, especially in difficult conditions. You can't just concentrate on getting your head down. You've got to think constantly about fighting through the weather as well, which will not make life easy on these guys.
Yeah, but that weather could provide opportunities that help them close back up on and make some places back. It's still a good way to go until the next pro car, that they're trying to catch up to. That is Nick Manders after their difficulties slowing down for pit lane. But yes, a struggle for a few of the oNiD cars this race. One car not struggling too much is the Leon Vesparis. Went for that different strategy at the start, started on the wet tyres, pitted early, maybe too early, has forced themselves to make 3 pit stops so far. But they are trying to catch up to not Skapas for the lead in but maybe try and catch Johnny as well. They were about 7 tenths quicker than Johnny, so they're closing in, only 2 seconds back at the moment as we go on board with Johnny.
This is Johnny's kind of conditions as well. We all know how much he likes a wet race, so he's got to focus on getting his head down. He's not really in a fight with Vesparis, if Vesparis has got the pace at the moment, but given how we usually are around here, you've got to wonder how hard he's going to fight for that overall position, or whether he's just going to be thinking, no, I've got 2 cars between me and the pros, and the next pro, best to keep my powder dry and hope to and keep my tyres alive to fight if anyone else catches up with me.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see which way Johnny decides to go. Maybe it might depend on how comfortable he is in these conditions. If he feels like he's maybe struggling with the car a little bit, he'll give the place up. If he is at home, as you say, he does like the wet conditions, then yeah, maybe he might just decide to fight it a little bit more. But yeah, you can also see the our leader coming up, and we'll be lapping these two cars shortly. If Aspires can just catch up to Johnny in time, you know, that could be an opportunity. We've seen earlier on in the race when we had that had a 4 or 5 car train, and the leader made their way through. It was at the time it was the 92 Porsche that made up a couple of places. Santon using the blue flags to their advantage. So could potentially see the same here, but that does involve Vespers catching up to Johnny, which they have done quite a bit in the second half of this lap. The gap down to 1 second, so Vespers definitely the more comfortable of the two drivers. And we'll just get you the lap times as they cross the line. Johnny, 139.6, 138.8 for Vespers. Nearly 9/10. Yeah, I can't imagine Johnny will be staying on too much. But he's ran wide. He's had a trip into the gravel. Luckily for him, he is not the only car to be off in the gravel at the moment. So is the next pro car behind them. Butson made a mistake into the final corner. Synchronized mistakes. So Johnny will drop behind the 92 Porsche as well, fall to 9th overall for car 9, but they will not lose any places within the pro class, as we'll see a replay of Butson through the well, we'll go on board with Johnny first, then maybe we'll catch Butson so you can see just struggling the car understeering. You get onto that painted tarmac, there's just no grip on there. Yeah, it does find the wall, but yeah, luckily for them, Butson making a similar mistake last time around. Let's see that now. Coming up towards final corner, long left-hander, just runs out a slight bit wide onto the curb. That spins the car off into the gravel. Luckily for them, not making any wall contact this time.
Yeah, you're leaning so hard on those tyres through that long looping left-hander. It's at some point they are going to give up on you. It's how far can you push on them, how much can you lean, and the temptation is there to just lean that bit too much, and it does come back to bite you, as it did for Butson then.
Yeah, because it's not just by how much you lean on the tyre, but where you position the car. You want to open up the corner as much as possible, but these curbs, you kind of have to use them in a lot of places. Just open the track up, allow yourself to carry a bit more speed, but in a braking zone like that, you just cannot afford to use them, as there isn't the grip on them, and yeah, it will instantly bite you. That means we have 3 AM cars. I'd say line astern. There is a 27 gap between Scapas and Vesperas, but Santon not too far behind Vesperas, only 4 seconds there, but no pro cars separating them. But quite a big gap to Paul Mitchell in 4th place in the AM class, 555. Ferrari have also just seen up. Well, Johnny, if the mistake from Butson wasn't enough relief of pressure, it'll be even more so. They've just picked up a drive-through penalty for track limits, the first we've seen so far of this race, and I can't imagine it will be the last.
Doesn't count, wasn't Stevie. But he'll be, yeah, he will not be a happy bunny in that car. I'm not sure. That can't have been surely for that off. It must have been for somewhere else he's picked up leads for that. Because if it gives you a track limits for gaining advantage there, then something is very wrong. But yeah, you're pushing and pushing, and as I said, you're using those curbs and trying to get as much lap time and open the corner up as much. Wow, that was an image in the rearview mirror there of Benedji's car. But yeah, sometimes it just comes back to haunt you.
Yeah, Olaf Badedge running wide there onto the curb and struggling with traction, going for a spin. And again, speaking of spins, back to the 81. They just had another spin at T11. Luckily not hitting the wall this time like they did on last time they spun there. But yeah, Marvin Butson really struggling in these conditions. Yeah, it's been a difficult time. Now lapped by the number 8, nearly running into the back of them there. But yeah, as you say, with the drive-through, it did come at a later point. But the wet conditions can be a bit funny for track limits. You maybe don't want to, you obviously don't want to push the curbs as much, the runoff, as it's slippery in these wet conditions. But as we seen earlier this year in our 2.4-hour series, we had a wet race at Misano. You can run wide and the game will be very quick to give you a track limit warning for running wide in the wet. We've seen pretty much every car that race picked up one drive-through, quite a good portion of the field picking up two throughout.
Yeah, was that Butson taking a drive-through there as well?
Yes, that was them serving that track on a drive-through, as Horak is having a little pirouette in the runoff of T1, having found themselves very wide. I wonder if trying to extend into sort of towards the pit entry has caught them out, as it is painted tarmac, so it will have less grip. Let's see as they come towards, are they going to pull onto the wide part? Yes, and immediately, and what I also know, sir, they've pulled out very late to go onto that painted part, so they've had to straighten the car out, turn it left while they're braking, turning while on wet painted tarmac. I've never, that's guaranteed disaster.
It's like every danger factor you can put for a corner there, isn't it? It's not one where it's going to make the car want to turn in the way you want, and that once the weight starts transferring, that rear end is going to swing round on you, especially if one or more of the tyres loses grip. I'm going to wonder, why is it we always end up commentating on races where it's tipping it down? Are we the curse? It seems to happen every time with us, Scotty.
You make a good point, because there was Donington earlier this year, there was Watkins Glen last year.
It's like they're setting us up for this.
Yeah. Well, odd coincidences, if they are coincidences, aside. Eric Muxka still opening the gap out front now, nearly 13 seconds in the lead. You can see just leaving a little bit of room to the curb on the outside entering the final corner, but using all of that curb on the exit will come around. Things spreading out as we're settling down into these wet conditions. The drivers adapting themselves to them, finding their rhythm. Maybe we'll see some battles close in. Let me have a little look up and down the timing screens to see if anyone is closing in. Skapas closing in ever so slightly to Lindblom. And when I say ever so slightly, I mean by 200ths of a second last lap round. Only 2 seconds between the pair of them, though. We talked about Eric Muxka opening the gap out in front. They're certainly pushing to do so, as they have picked up a drive-through penalty for track limits. I
did wonder, as they went through that quick right-hander, I did wonder if they'd gone a little bit too far over the white line there, but I'm never 100% sure on how temperamental AC is going to be with track limits, but it might be that this one is very tight for them, and that is going to give them a big disadvantage to Matt Jordan behind. That drive-through it's not the longest pit lane in the world here, but it'll certainly be enough to drop them back behind a charging car less than 15 seconds behind them.
Yeah, you can tell they were pushing. They did 138.3 last lap around. They were the only car in the 38s, and it was a low 38. So it tells you how much they were pushing. They gained 7/10 on Jordan last lap, but as you say, they are going to lose that place. It was they'd lost quite a bit of time coming into this lap, so yeah, just running a little bit wide. And as I was saying, with the wet conditions, even if you run wide and lose a little bit of time, the game is just very strict and will give you the track limit warning. You just have to play the game. You can't, normally you might think, oh yeah, you can run wide as long as you give up the time, you won't get a warning. In wet conditions, that is not the case. You cannot run wide in the slightest. You have to hold yourself back that little bit, and it doesn't seem like Muska has been doing that. Got a little weather update, 30 minutes. The rain will be getting lighter, light rain in 30 minutes time. Currently, most of the drivers' stint timers somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. So the drivers will have to make a pit stop before the rain gets lighter. Have to wonder how long that light rain will stick around before maybe some dry conditions again.
And how much water they're going to be able to clear from the track in short order. 19 cars out there, so that's going to clear some water. It's not like we've got a full-size Le Mans field pushing round lap after lap, just sweeping that water out of the way. That standing water is going to sit there for a little while, even once that light rain comes in.
Johnny Ashley has had another mistake this time at turn 4. Luckily for him, big gap behind him of 50 seconds to Andy Hearn, well, at least 50 seconds before that, well, after that mistake, yes. So plenty of a gap behind Johnny, which they're going to be quite thankful of having made another mistake there. But we're watching this battle now. Nick Manders, as mentioned, drive-through penalty, stop-go 30 for pit lane difficulties. Speeding is now pushing to catch up. Bit of a slide coming off of turn 6 there as they try and push to catch up to the 38 Aston Martin with Yanis Murr at the wheel, as we also have Marvin Butson trying to catch up to Andy Hearn as well for the final top 10 position.
There's a couple of little fights forming here. Got Nick Manders on Yanis Murr, and he's getting closer by the second. That's just dipped down to 3/10. Butson trying to close down Andy Hearn there, and that's going to be a tough fight to get past, but they're all intermixed with each other in lapping traffic, and that's always makes things a bit more complicated, because those guys who are receiving the blue flags are going to try and make way for the faster guys coming through. At the same time, you don't want to compromise your race and give up position.
You can see in the background there, Yanis Murr defending to the inside from Nick Manders. Nick not quite far enough alongside, but has maybe pressured Murr into mistake, outbraking themselves, running well wide into the runoff. Does a good job keeping the car in a straight line as it slides across the ice-like paint, but it will be position gain for Nick Manders as Andy Hearn. Big slide coming out of the right-hander there. They've given the P10 up to Marvin Butson, who's trying to recover after a few mistakes since the rain has started falling, and is going to be unlapped here by, I believe that's the 301 McLaren. No, sorry, not the 301. Sorry, being lapped by the 182 McLaren, currently sitting in P6, top of the Anfield.
That's a very good place to be for them. They've got a good old gap back to Leon Vesperas there. But it might be, my imagination, that gap seems to have come down by a couple of seconds as they're working their way through the traffic.
Traffic will have an effect on the gaps, but yeah, still quite a bit of a gap, so they'll not be too worried about that. They'll just be worried about trying to stay consistent, not make any mistakes, which we've seen a few of in these wet conditions. One driver that has made a mistake run up, but also other drivers that fell foul to the pit entry, picking up a drive-through early on, and that did have them at the back of the field. They find themselves now up to P16 through other drivers' difficulties. They avoid also in front of Horak, we've seen spinning off a couple of times, and Badej, who's really struggling with the wet conditions. Quite a few mistakes from both of those drivers. As we look back at Bertolsen, a lot of focus, a little look over to their right-hand side. Wonder if they've got some data alongside that they're looking at, weather conditions, perhaps lap times, or maybe some information posted by their teammates on Discord. But yeah, working away at trying to close up to Borowick in the 301 Mustang in front of them, and is lost a bit of time last lap, but was invalid, so maybe a little wide moment as we look back to Badej, who's running outfield. Quite a few mistakes from them recently. They're struggling in these difficult wet conditions, but they're still running around, which is always good to see.
Ooh, bit of a twitch there off the corner as I'm seeing a lot of cars bogging down a bit coming out of that turn. I wonder if the traction control settings they're having to play with are just kind of making the car not want to put the power down as they're liking it. But better that than the car absolutely yeeting itself into the wall. Dave Wood just getting those laps in, trying to push forward. He's in a bit of an island at the moment. He's got, what, 29 seconds back to Michael Horak, 11 seconds to Thompson in front. But it's a good old gap you can just drive into, concentrate on getting those laps in.
Yeah, concentrate indeed. Very important right here, as you know, moment of lost focus, and that could be when you make a mistake. We look to Eric Muxka now, trying to recover after that drive-through penalty. Behind Johnny Ashley here. We'll be hoping Johnny doesn't wait too long to let them through. And on board with Matt Jordan, who's holding stern at the front of the field. 15-second gap after that drive-through, having just recently lapped Leon Vesperez, I think that is. Yep, that is Leon Vesperez behind.
At the P1, we can stop the race now.
They might be thinking that. We'd save them some headaches and race strategy for sure. But yeah, we still have 4.5 hours to go. Still that light rain in 30 minutes. So no sign, no confirmation of the rain stopping just yet. But it does seem like it might come to an end sooner rather than later. Talked about Bud Thompson trying to catch up to the 301 Mustang. As we see here from race control, 5-second time penalty for car 81 for a bump pass on lap 52 when they were passing Andy Hearn. So we did see Andy Hearn having a bit of a slide out of that corner. Does seem like that was contact assisted from the fellow Ferrari driver. But there is also a penalty, a drive-through penalty for the 301. For track limits, that will promote Botolfsson up another place, up to 15th position.
Definitely be happy with that. You've done this track, Chelsea. How much time is it for a trundle down the pit lane? I'm not sure how many drive-throughs you've got around here, but you've done more laps on the track than I have, at least.
I may have done some laps, but this track had a funny thing of obviously one of the recent tracks added to the game. There was nearly a couple of years ago now where, yeah, of course, quite a few events used the track. It was new, but then the track wasn't new anymore and it was never used again. So it's honestly been that long. I don't have a foggiest of what it is. I will tell you, the time it takes you to get from pit entry to pit exit is 26 seconds. So it'll be about that. I mean, that is kind of what we've seen between Matt Jordan and Eric Muska. Eric had a 10-second advantage beforehand. They've dropped back to about 16 seconds behind. So add that up, that's about 26 seconds. So yeah, that seems to be about the time lost. But Botolfsson is only about 12 seconds back. So they will be gaining that position. And Dave Wood is... Dave Wood might be a lap down. I have to try and see. No, Dave Wood is on the same lap and is maybe close enough to take advantage of Barwick's drive-through. Oh wait, hang on a second here. Dave Wood has also picked up a drive-through penalty of their own. That's not going to be helping them.
Never mind then. I was going to say that looked like it might drop Borwick into a fight with Dave Wood, but not as much now. So he's...
Not as much now as Dave Wood trying to recover from a long pit stop of 3 minutes stopped in their pit box. Are they on? They are closing up to the cars in front of them, as you would expect. They do have the pace to close in, but it's quite a bit of time that they have to make up, and Dave Wood has just got onto a curb and ran wide, which isn't going to have helped him. But they get to carry on. Look back to Marvin Butson, who's trying to catch up to Johnny Ashley. Was much closer before they themselves they had a spin same time as Johnny, and then picked up a drive-through not long after. They do have a 5-second penalty hanging over them as they try and trying to see if they are trying to unlap themselves from the 823 Porsche in front of them, running in P5. They were 0.4 of a second quicker than the Porsche last lap around, so having a little bit more pace, but of course, unlapping yourself isn't necessarily easy. Really depends how much the driver in front wants to let you through or not. And only being 0.4 quicker maybe isn't enough for Daniel Lindblom to say, yeah, sure, you can go on through. He seems to be comfortable in front as Marvin is having to fight through not only the dirty air, but of course the spray from the rain.
Yeah, he is going to be driving largely blind there. You're just going to be focused on the rear lights of that Porsche just to give you some kind of reference point as you try and get through the corners. I'll say the 81 is looking a little bit second hand there. It definitely looks like it's been in the wars. So you've got to wonder if they're going to take a longer stop to repair a bit of damage.
Yeah, they did obviously pick up some damage just before they switched over to the wet tyre, and they spent 40 seconds on top of their normal pit stop repairing that. So either that damage repair hasn't quite synced up and their car is fine, or they've had another moment and picked up some more damage with their pace running competitively in the 38s, which is what we're seeing from our top drivers at the front of the field as well. I have to imagine that they have don't have any damage and that they're running just fine. See a couple of cars in the pit lane. Borowick serving that drive-through penalty, as well as Batofson, who I think is taking a voluntary drive-through. Hasn't voluntarily driven through pit lane. They are stopping in their pit box. Maybe taking on a bit of fuel. We have had it confirmed within 30 minutes the rain will stop and drivers will be waiting for the track to dry out for a second time this race and making another switch to the slick tyres.
That's going to make things very interesting. It's like, who is going to gamble first on when they choose that switch over point? So it's about 15 minutes ago we got the light rain warning, wasn't it?
Yes, about that.
So another 15 minutes and then the rain should decrease, and then another half hour until it goes away completely. And then it's going to be how quickly does that standing water get swept away so that they can get the slick tyres on.
Yeah, we did say at the start of the race, it took about 15 to 20 minutes for the track to dry up, though it might have been hard to say if it was a little bit drier than it is now or a little bit wetter. We unfortunately don't get that much detailed information watching alongside. Only the drivers will really know from feeling the track conditions. But yeah, 15 to 20 minutes seems to sort of, judging by the start of the race, is how long it will take to dry up. Now, that is a slightly awkward time as a lot of the drivers are coming up to the end of their stint timer. Everyone's sort of between 35 and 42 minutes here, so they will be pitting in the next few minutes. Everyone will have made a trip through pit lane within the next 10 minutes. The question is, what will drivers be doing in pit lane? You can't imagine, they could change onto a new set of wet tyres. They are not limited on how many wet tyres they have. Or they could go for a short pit stop, maybe about 15 seconds to pick up fuel and run till the track dries up. There's a big slide there for the 182. Might allow them, as they've actually lapped the number 81, who has fallen back from the Porsche in front. Not going to be ideal for both of those drivers, losing a bit of time. As, another big twitch there from the 81 coming off of the curb. Very close ones here.
Yeah, it's not looking a happy car running right behind the McLaren there. It's just that little bit of disruption in the airflow and that little the desire to get past the car in front. He is pushing very hard. It's sorry, as I checked my name because my memory is like a goldfish. It's Button, isn't it, in the 81, trying to get past Scaffers there, trying to unlap himself, but the more you push, the more risk you're taking. Nick Mander's coming into the pits. Does he actually get it slowed in time? Maybe.
We'll get confirmation when it gets to the end of the pits. We'll see if drive-through penalty pops up once again. Looking at those who have pitted, they have taken new wet tyres, 30-second pit stops from Shorer in the 37, 76 and the 800s that Fuskin has jumped back into, as Nick Manders just going for a drive-through. That was a voluntary drive-through.
Presumably just to reset the stint time on the car there.
Yes, so they have the field to carry on. Vesparis is also in the pits, but they're stopping in their pit box. So yeah, this is where we're going to see the sort of difference in pit strategies. Those that are just going to drive through or maybe take a brief stop in their pits to take on some fuel, and those that are going to change tyres, get themselves a bit more grip, but give up track position in the short run. It will be crucial to see, it is a crucial decision, time to be won and lost here. What strategy is right, no one will really know. It will be whoever has the best guess, and we'll find out which was right, which was wrong in about 30 odd minutes time when the rain has stopped and they all come in to switch to slick tyres.
Of course, the downside of taking a short stop now means you will have to make that time up in the pits later at some point. It is it's all a compromise of trying to find the best way to make it work for yourself and get yourself forward up that grid. But there's going to be so much variance and so much around when those slick tyres come in that everyone's just on tenterhooks at the moment, waiting for their opportunity. And it's going to be who's timed it best.
Yes, we are seeing more pit stops now. Leader Matt Jordan is into the pits as well. Skapas from the lead in the AMP class. 17 has actually done a full pit stop and switched over to Dennis Cometto. That's an interesting change as we currently look at Ure in 37 Aston. Again, looking to the right-hand side, seems to be the right-hand side, the monitor of choice for extra data. The drivers are having a little peek out on the straights, a little bit of a slide on the runoff there as they use all of the track. I'm very intrigued by the 17's decision to switch Cometto in for Vesperas. It seems like quite an odd time to make that driver change.
I mean, there's any number of things it could be. It might just be Vesperas has worn himself out driving the wet stint. Maybe just needs that physical break to keep himself fresh for the remainder of the race. It might just be they might want to get him out and then bring him back in whilst the slicks come in, when they're going to need as much pace as possible. All drivers have to do a stint in the race, so if you want one driver to focus on one thing, then it's a case of the balancing act, isn't it?
Giving us a little wave there. Yeah, have you noticed anything then about Ure as we've been watching them here?
I noticed he's gone full cosplay.
Yeah, he has.
With the race suit in there.
Yeah, it's hopefully, I'm not too sure, showing his Netherlands on the nationality. I'm not sure if they are themselves, but I don't know what the weather is like for them. Hopefully it's not that hot of a day, otherwise I imagine they'll be absolutely sweating buckets, in which case, absolutely full respect. It can be I know it can be hot enough as it is in normal clothes, or light clothes even, let alone a full race suit. But yeah, respect to Ure for the, well, you say full cosplay, as Alex mentions in chat. No helmet, not quite full cosplay, but yeah, still good commitment.
It's very committed. It's like you're putting on your full Liverpool kit to play FIFA. But he's, yeah.
Though a little hotter than a full football kit. I think I'd rather be wearing a full football kit here. Though I suppose you don't get quite as warm playing FIFA on a little controller than in a full rig where you've got your monitors, your PC giving off heat, as well as the wheelbase. That does all add up, and it does get very hot in sim racing rooms. Trust me, whenever I walk in and out of my room, it feels like you're walking between 10 degrees difference between the rooms. Yeah, it does get very hot.
Yeah, and it's when you're sat next to a hot PC as well, it does not do anything to your temperature levels. So putting on a full race suit is definitely an extra challenge to add to yourself.
Got a replay here for the 555. They've switched over to Harley Byron. Butchering that, and they've instantly gone for a spin. I'll tell you why. You see those yellow markings on the sidewall? They have accidentally switched to slick tyres. That is going to be a struggle.
And now they've got to get back to the pits on them as well, so, unless they are really, really confident in their ability to drive in the changing conditions. Because I've got a feeling this is not going to be a quick lap.
No, it's not going to be quick at all. Now that they've realised they're on slick tyres, they're taking it a little bit more carefully, and it doesn't seem like they're having as many issues. But yeah, it's going to be quite a bit of time lost for them as they try and get themselves back round to the pits. Jump on board with the number 8, who has found themselves in front of former race leader Eric Muska. They put move up the inside of turn 6, and looks like an easy move as they have a bit more grip. The number 8 still yet to pit, so that is how Eric has found themselves behind the number 8. So yeah, number 8 still yet to pit. Both of our 2 leaders at the moment, quite a few cars not opting to take tyres, but they did need to take fuel. Matt Jordan needed 17 seconds worth of fuel. Eric and Semdi needed 11 seconds. Shahabi 13, Daniel Lindblom 15, and Scappas needed 18. Johnny Ashley, about 10 minutes ago, did take a drive-through to reset their stint timer. So yeah, they've been running a little bit heavier on fuel, a little bit more weight in the car, but yeah, it has saved them time in the pits. The number 8 coming into the pits now. I wonder what they're going to do, because new weather information has come in. 30 minutes, the rain will be back. It is a very short spell without the rain. That's going to be a massive headache for the driver, for all the teams trying to figure this strategy out.
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit of time where the wets won't work as well as you'd like, and then they're going to start coming back in. So you've got to wonder how worth it is to even consider changing to slicks with that little time.
Yeah.
Someone might gamble, try and make a bit of time up in that stint, but you're then going to lose so much again when you're having to change off them.
Yeah, the track isn't going to dry out in the time, you know, let alone have enough time to make up the time loss from the pit stops. But we go back on board with Ure as they have got up to Borowick in the 301 double yellow Motorsports Mustang. They're closing in. Mustang using a lot of that curb on the exit, very bumpy over there. Ure not using as much. Mustang has pulled out a little bit of a gap there, so it seems to be paying off for them. But yeah, they'll look at the last lap times for these 2. Ure pretty much identical times between the 2 of them last time. Ure losing a bit of time this lap. We've seen that through turn 12. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this goes. If Uri can maybe find a bit of confidence, close in, or if Borwixer has them covered and is just going to be able to hold there in front.
Tiptoeing his way across the apex at turn 1 there, but has closed up a long way as the Mustang lost a big chunk of time there. Ironically, that slide puts him in a really good direction for the next turn, so he was able to pull a little bit out through it.
Yeah, so it seems like
a second between them.
Yeah, of course, Uri and the Aston Martin chasing down the Mustang. Each car will have their strengths and weaknesses. Looking at that big, you can really tell that from the speed trap figures. The Aston 248 kilometers, 248. The Mustang running 253 kilometers an hour is their highest speed trap figures. So up to 5 kilometers an hour quicker for the Mustang. Of course, a bit of slipstream for Uri. If they can just close in a little bit more, will help negate that difference. But yeah, that sure shows how the Aston gaining time in the corners, but the Mustang pulling it back on the straights, and how it might make an overtake quite difficult if Uri was to close up a bit more.
See it down the pit straight there, looking back from Borwick's rear wing. The Mustang just starts to pull away there. I've always found the Mustang in, well, at least in other sims, a bit less stable than the Aston. Aston's very much a cruiser. It will go for miles and miles and miles. You can take a lot of curb with it and just eat up distance. But the Mustang, that speed on that Mustang is just ridiculous as they try when they can just pull away.
Yeah.
All it takes is one moment and Jory's going to be right back on top of them.
Yeah, that's the thing with these conditions, you're never far away from making a mistake, having a moment, losing time, losing a position, as long as Uri can just, stay close enough here, just to keep putting a bit of pressure on, force Barwick to, push, keep their own pace up, not let them get too comfortable into a rhythm. That can be the difference between, a driver just staying in front of you and them just pushing a little too hard and making a mistake and letting you through. They do also have the Bentley, our current race leader, Matt Jordan, coming up behind them to lap them as they come into the final corner. Bentley getting very close on the brakes. Aston having to sort of make way there is maybe a little apology indicator flash from the Bentley, or thank you for getting out of the way there. But yeah, again, very close between the two drivers there through the final corner. Uri, of course, losing a bit of time from that. We'll be hoping that the same happens with the Mustang when the Bentley catches up to them.
To be honest, Jordan had to make the move. Muxer is closing them down. He was quite a chunk off the back of him. He's now, what, 5 seconds? Just under, and I've only been keeping half an eye on it, but that gap is getting narrower. So Jordan is having to clear this traffic to put them in between himself and the number 70.
Yeah, that gap is closing down at quite a rate. Last lap was 137.9 for a leader, 136.7, 1.2 seconds gained for the number 70. But of course, that 70 will have to fight their way through the same traffic and will lose a bit of time as well. The Bentley has now caught on to the back of the Mustang that runs a little bit wide here and does let the Bentley through, and give a little flash of the indicators just to show appreciation of that. And you can see how the Aston has closed back up with that, but they'll have to do it all again when the Ferrari catches up. He's not too far behind, as to say. That gap now down to 3 seconds. I thought the Bentley was going to go for the pits there. Is maybe trying to break the slipstream. A little worried that Mustang is going to be a little too quick on the straights for it, despite being laps in front. I can see the Ferrari in the background again. another 0.8 of a second gained. Will continue to close the gap. A little moment for Dennis Camedo. They just had a half spin, I think, at turn 11 off camera. So that's lost them a bit of time as they've been trying to catch up to Bendel in the 92 Porsche in front of them. But the Aston Martin certainly closing up quite a bit here through the first half of the lap. But this is the second half of the lap is where the track opens up a little bit more and allows the Mustang to stretch its legs, use that straight line speed and open the gap back up.
This is starting to play into Jordan's hands a bit as well. What he wants is these two to start fighting, get themselves into a battle where they're concentrating on each other. They're not, and they're less likely to go, oh, we've got a leader behind the P2 car behind us, better get out of the way. They're going to be in their own fights for position. And while we encourage slower drivers to let the faster drivers through, generally you're not expected to completely compromise your race to do so.
Yes, it's not like F1 where you have to move out of the way sort of really early on. It's up to the leading car, the one lapping, to initiate a clean overtake. Until then, the car in front doesn't have to do anything. So it'll be up to Eric here to, initiate that overtake. You can see a lot braver on the outside there of T1, helping them to close in. As a bit wide there for the Aston. Would you like to know what's just popped up on my timing screen?
Go on.
That 37 Aston, drive-through penalty for track limits.
No. That's a pity. That was turning into a really good battle there. But with ACC gives no unfair judgments, really. It's if you do it, you do it.
Indeed. That'll be pressure off for the double Yellow Motorsports car. They can serve back off and let the number 73. As we jump on board with Matthias Fuskin, we certainly had double perspective here. We can see in-car virtually and in real life as we see him working away into the right-hander, having to balance the car a little bit on the brakes, turn it in, not using too much curb on the exit. I can see a driver's eye view now into the right-hander. Again, not using too much of the curb on the exit. Not bouncing over it like what we've seen with the double yellow Motorsports Mustang when we were watching them shortly ago.
I mean, the Mustang can definitely get away with bouncing the curbs a bit. It's got a lot of centre of gravity to work with as you go over a curve. But the BMW surprisingly tends to want to crouch down as it goes over curbs. And it's not as happy with it, but it's definitely... He's definitely pushing on. He's being very, very precise as he's positioning the car through these laps. He's down in the back of the field, 30 odd seconds up front. He's got nothing to lose. He's basically hot lapping here to try and get back up on the front.
I mean, this could be quite an enjoyable situation as a driver. You've got nothing to lose. Just push as much as you want. Try and catch up to the cars in front. We're coming into a very interesting phase. The rain has dropped down to light rain. In 10 minutes, that rain will stop. The track is already considered damp. So the wet tires are going to be getting warmer in these conditions. It's going to be getting hotter. Going to be giving a little bit more tire wear. And what I've seen in some of these mixed condition races, now is a very important phase as we see Johnny Ashley in the wall, trying to see what part of the lap this is at. I think this is coming out of turn 12 into the penultimate corner. Let's get a replay of this one, see how it happened.
Just a little too wide and a couple of wheels on that painted surface, and the traction just broke on him.
Sort of being distracted maybe by the Aston Martin that they were behind. And yeah, just making that mistake, running out wide, and yeah, finding the barrier. Thankfully for Johnny, big gap behind. I mean, quite behind the 92 Porsche. Brendel has closed up to only 2 seconds back, but they are in different classes, so Johnny might not be too concerned with that. But speaking of cars closing in, we also have Alex Shahabi closing in on Hogland, the number 8 Ferrari. Now, the Ferrari did make a mistake last stint, did drop behind the 55 Ferrari, but didn't stop for fuel in the pits, and that's allowed them to jump back up to 3rd place. But Shahabi seems to be a little bit more comfortable, a little more confident, and has subsequently a bit more pace. Is closing in. Let me get you those last lap times. Is a 138.2 for the number 8, a 137.8 for the 55. So 4/10 gained last lap around. We'll have to see what it is this time round. But yeah, Shahabi looking to get themselves back up into the podium place.
But again, that's without stopping for fuel, he's going to have to pay that back at some point. He just has to hope that he can clear through these cars now and make ground on the cars behind.
Well, this kind of goes back to how the number 8 originally lost the lead to the number 70. The 8 was leading, came into the pits, took on, I think, 17 seconds of fuel. Then the 70 came in, only took in 10 or 9 seconds of fuel, and subsequently came out of the pits in front with the lead. And so it seems like the Ferrari have taken that strategy, because of course the next pit stop, even though the number 8 Ferrari might have had a lot more fuel than the 70, they both changed tyres. It was a 30-second pit stop. It didn't matter, the number 8 lost the time, never recovered it. Of course, had the extra fuel, the extra weight, would have compromised their pace slightly in that stint as well. So, seems like they've tried to sort of taken that experience and they've tried to incorporate it into this part of the strategy. But, of course, whether it works here it's a slightly different situation. We'll have to wait and see, as we are now a little more than 2 hours into the race.
Both of them trying to clear that Aston there. I think Alex lost out just slightly there to the to Hugland's car as the Aston tried to get out of the way. But he's back through now and back on the chase. And he is pushing hard. You can see him carrying extra speed on that entrance to the long left-hander. And that's going to, and he's just got to try and do it without compromising the messing around with the track limits too much.
Yeah, we've also had a bit of a moment for the lead. You will have seen that gap drop. The 70 ran a 136.9 last lap, was only a 38.8 for the leader, the 22. That's nearly 2 seconds gained in a single lap. So we're going to have a fight for third coming up here, but also a fight for the lead. Things are going to get very interesting here as the track continuing to sort of dry out a little bit as the rain eases off. Will stop for maybe about somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see which drivers continue pushing on in this phase, push the tyres to the limit, wear them out, and which drivers might just back it off a little bit, try and not damage the tyre too much, so when the rain does come back and the track gets wetter again, that the tread blocks will still be in good shape and they'll have the grip and be able to make up the time that they are giving up now.
You can already see the Bentley running offline as they come out of the last corner to try and cool those tyres a touch. So you wouldn't think it would have to do that quite this early, but it depends on how much life they've already taken out of them.
I mean, even if the tyres are just getting that little bit hotter, every little helps. It's better to start early and you know, so that they don't get too hot initially. As you see, somebody having a bit of a slide there over the curbs. So 22 has picked the pace back up, 37.2 last lap, another 36.9 for the 70. So it seemed to be a bit of an off lap for the 22. And we still further back, equal lap times between the 8 and the 55. Further back, though, we do have other battles forming. The 92 has caught up to the back of Johnny Ashley for P7. We also have Nick Manders has got up to the back of Dennis Cometto for P9. Both battles that are in across the different classes, but big pace differences. 1.1 seconds gain for Brendel on Johnny Ashley last lap. 2.8 seconds gained for Nick Manders on Dennis Cometto last lap. So Cometto struggling a little bit. We've had a change of position for P3. The number 8 car, Hogland, has gone off at T6.
And that not only gives Shahabi the place, it gives him free air to drive into. He got a 5-second advantage over Hogland now. As we watch the replay.
Turn 5, a little bit of a tighter line there, is on the curb, on the brakes. We've seen how that just doesn't work before, and hopefully lesson learned for Robin, and they don't make that one again.
Harvey just goes cheers very much and waltzes off into the distance. 5 seconds to the good now.
Now, we were talking about if Johnny was going to fight the AM cars as much being in the pro class. I think we see what the answer is there. Big defense all the way to the inside towards T1. Trying to hold off from the Porsche. Not close enough for a move this time through. I wonder how aggressive is the Porsche going to be trying to pass if Johnny is going to sort of be that aggressive in defending.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know why I even asked the question. I could have pretty much assumed that Johnny was going to fight anyone near him. So he's, but he is defending hard against that Porsche. Well renowned for being a bit of a skittish car is the Porsche, so it's probably less than fun around here.
Of course, it's got the engine hanging out beyond the rear axle does not help it. You hear quite a few complaints from drivers on the Mon Ultimate with its balance, but Johnny runs out wide here into turn 8. The Porsche gets alongside, but Johnny has run on the outside, but they come together on the turn 9 apex. Bit of an awkward one, that.
Yeah, door to door, they were running alongside each other in very tricky conditions. I'm sure the stewards will take a look at it.
Yes, it has popped up on the stewarding feed, so we'll have to see what they think of it. From that angle there, I kind of imagine the Porsche trying to avoid the wet curb, you know, to try and have the traction, not have a sort of slip and slide, lose the momentum, but Johnny trying to nudge the Porsche over to the curb. We'll get a replay of it here from on board the Porsche. You can see braking zone. The Porsche hasn't braked much early, much later than the Ferrari. The Ferrari just runs in deep, and they're now side by side. They come in here, and it's just, say converging lines. The Porsche didn't want to use so much curb. Johnny wanted to sort of edge didn't want to run too wide to let the Porsche through, and yeah, they just converged onto that same line.
Yeah, 2 GT3 cars trying to be in the same place at the same time. It generally ends badly for one of them. So it's unfortunately in this case that was Mendel, who is now dropped about 11 seconds back after fighting his way back into that and is looking very slidey in that portion now as the weight starts to come down.
Yeah, Dennis Cometto running P3 within the AM class. Running a bit wide, running very wide here off into the gravel. That's a very odd mistake from him. He's already been passed by Nick Manders. I wonder if that was just a mistake, a loss of concentration, maybe getting a bit distracted with pit strategies. The rain has stopped, so the track is drying. We can tell that, you know, we're not seeing much spray from the cars. So the tires will be starting to overheat, the cars sliding. Well, in one way, the cars will be sliding a little bit more from the tires losing grip, but the track itself will be getting quicker and offering more grip as it dries. So very odd sensation as Camaro continues to push on, but yeah, struggling a little bit through the first half of this lap.
Yeah, those tyres will feel hideous as this continues until that rain starts to come down and put some water down to cool them.